She muted me before. Good morning, everyone. And we're off to a great start. November the 11th, General Finance Committee meeting, Township of Muskoka Lakes 2020. I'm calling the meeting to order at 9:03. And I'm declaring that this electronic meeting is being held in accordance with Section 238 of the Municipal Act 2001 due to the COVID-19 pandemic. All members are present, and I confirm that we have quorum. There are no members absent. The CAO, the clerk, and other members of the senior management team and staff are present. I will advise that the public input on the agenda was invited at and to TML Public Committee at muskokalakes.ca. We did have one email from Mr. Graham Smith, re-access control to Huckleberry Rock, item 5A report. And the motions today have been pre-populated with random movers and seconders. To expedite the meeting, members shall physically raise their hands to vote until the chair has confirmed the vote. If the vote is unclear, a verbal vote shall be recorded by the clerk. This is not considered a recorded vote. And as a special note to acknowledge November 11th and those who fell for us, we will be pausing at 11 o'clock for a brief acknowledgement of that act. So FYI on that. So point number 2, I'm going to acknowledge now that there is a supplementary agenda pursuant to section 7.2.1 of council procedure. Bylaw 2019-079, the following supplementary agenda was issued to add under item 4A, invited delegations, a presentation from the Integrity Commissioner midterm training as a PowerPoint. So, you know what, I don't have any more than one page.
You have the actual agenda right there.
Okay, good, so that's it. Okay, good. So item 4A, Suzanne Craig. I'm going to invite Suzanne. She's here now. The Integrity Commissioner. Sorry?
Disclosures of interest.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest before I introduce our speaker? Nope. Susan? Okay, thank you. I'm going to apologize for that. So I'm going to introduce Suzanne Craig, the Integrity Commissioner, who is going to give us some midterm training. It's approximately 1 hour in length, and she has a PowerPoint. So Suzanne, welcome, and you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kavitz, and members of council, Mr. Mayor, and Township Clerk, and CAO. I'm very pleased to be here this morning, and I certainly won't take up too much of your time, but I appreciate the fact that you've allowed me to come and speak with you this morning. I'm currently the Integrity Commissioner for the Township of Muskoka Lakes. In addition to that, I am the IC for Georgian Bay, Ravenhurst, District of Muskoka, Blue Mountains, City of Barrie, City of Vaughan, Toronto District School Board, and Waterfront Toronto. That may seem like a lot, but in the past I was the IC for quite a few more. And it's good news to know that usually Integrity Commissioners don't have too much apart from training from time to time, providing advice to members of council, and on the rare occasion, investigating code complaints. I know that you have all had some code of conduct and conflict of interest training in the past since coming to office, and I'm here today to just give you a refresher at your halfway marker in your term. So what do? I'm sure you've had other integrity commissioners. They've all had their ways of doing things. What I do is I draft codes of conduct. I set out the rules when I speak with you. I provide oversight on some access and privacy rules that intersect with the code, workplace harassment, governance, and of course, as I said, I investigate code complaints. But most importantly, as Integrity Commissioner, I am your. So I'm still on our cover page, but that's fine. Thank you. I am a resource, and I really, if there's a takeaway today, I'd like you to remember that I am a resource to members of council and local boards, so that you may seek advice, Integrity Commissioner advice. I can't give you legal advice, but I can give you Integrity Commissioner advice on your proposed actions and whether what you're planning to do or say may run afoul of the code or the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. So I really hope that you will take advantage of this resource that my office is for your township. Please get the next slide. So elected officials are very important to the fabric of your township. You know that, and you all have special skills. You all come from different walks of life. But when a member of council is elected or a local board member is appointed, you cease to represent a particular group or a matter of interest that might have brought you to the decision to run for council or become a member of board, and you become one part of the governing body recognized by the Municipal Act. The Municipal Act is what gives you power, and I know that over the years, many councillors and local board members have said, well, you know, there's not really any commentary on what we do, and that's intentional. And if you have concerns about that, I know that changes to Municipal Act is a very long process. But over the years, every time there has been an amendment or amendments to the Municipal Act, there has always been an intentional decision to not specifically give roles and responsibilities to individual members of council because you operate as a body. You are not supposed to, under the code, participate in activities that grant or appear to grant any special consideration or treatment or advantage to an individual or to a group that is not available to everyone in your township. And so transparency is the cornerstone of the code regime. As a result, unless you are prohibited by law, you have to let people know how you make decisions. So default is open meetings. You may go into closed meetings under the Municipal Act. There are provisions, section 239, that allow you to go into closed session. But for the most part, your meetings must be open. However, when they are closed, you're bound by confidentiality. Next slide, please. Public confidence is what you are working for. Over the years, I've spoken to several individual members of council, and they've said to me, well, listen, I've been elected by the people out there, or I've been appointed by council to do a particular work for my community. But again, as I said in the previous slide, you represent the whole community and you operate as a body. So what the council is looking to do is enhance public confidence in the integrity of how your township actually makes decisions. Muskoka Lakes created the Office of the Integrity Commissioner and drafted a code of conduct years before it was required by the province. In 2019, amendments to the Municipal Act required each township to have an IC. You had one, and you have a code of conduct. And those rules set out what your agreement is as a body. Your agreement is to your external public on accountable behavior. So the public trust is enhanced through transparent and accountable governance, decision-making, and those rules are enshrined in your code. Next slide, please. So here we talk about the code of conduct and members of council and local boards. And over the years, there have been inclusions in codes of conduct as to the roles and responsibilities of local board members. Local board members are not elected, they're appointed, but they do an important and vital role in the community. They bring their perspectives, they advise council on the work that must be done. They make recommendations, but they do not make decisions that are binding. Council makes those decisions. So if a member of the public is appointed to a local board, that board member is appointed at the pleasure of council. They don't hold office. They don't represent a constituency. Of course, they represent positions in the constituency, but they do not represent council or the local board unless specifically mandated to do so. And this is also in your code of conduct. Local boards operate only within meetings that have been given proper notice, and members have to ensure that they're holding the board meeting and their actions are actually lawful under your bylaws. No appointed local board member may act beyond their mandate of the local board, which is granted by council. And when there are members of council that are appointed to sit on local boards, members of council may, of course, bring their perspective to the local board and then bring that perspective to council. But again, when members of council who are local board members sit as council, they come with fresh ideas. So they may bring the perspective of the local board, but then they have to take into consideration staff reports, recommendations, public input, and they do not have to advocate for the local board. And sometimes, individuals will say, well, they're on the local board, but they voted in a different way when they were on council. And that is because members of council have to take into consideration all things that come to their attention, including what may not have been discussed at the local board level. I think I might have missed a slide. I'm so sorry. Hold on a sec, because we're looking at duties of the Integrity Commissioner. Pardon me, just having some difficulty with my electronics. So I think we're on. Thank you for your patience. Okay, duties of the Integrity Commissioner. So I have put at the bottom complaint investigation because I really think that that's the least important of my duties as Integrity Commissioner. My role is to, create information bulletins, ensure that members of council and local boards understand the rules of the code. I'm a resource to your individual members so that you can call me, you can email me with questions. Some of you have already to assist you in determining what path to take and if you should be declaring a conflict of interest or whether you should be refraining from participating in a particular meeting because you have a perceived bias. I also provide an annual report, and you will have received my annual report, which sets out the number of code complaints, the informal code complaints, if there are any issues of note that I think that members of council should be aware of. And of course, at the bottom of my duties, not in importance, but certainly in what I feel my role entails, is complaint investigation. I receive formal complaints that allege breaches of the code of conduct of members of council and local boards, and I take that very seriously. And over the years, I've had some very significant code complaints that have set somewhat of a precedent in the IC world, although integrity commissioners don't follow precedent. We are an adjudicative body, not like the courts, but in order to have some measure of consistency in the area of accountability and transparency, integrity commissioners do meet twice a year, and we do try to all follow the guidance of the courts, best practices in some of the inquiries, Bellamy, Cunningham, and now Morocco, and the Collingwood inquiry that have come out. So those are the roles that I have as integrity commissioner. Most important for me is education and outreach. Next slide, please. So again, roles and obligations, the role of council, role of head of council, and role of officers and employees. This is so very significant because again, members of council, you come to your positions with an idea of what your township needs. You live there, you know the individuals, you know the issues of note. Regrettably, the Municipal Act does not set out roles for individual members of council, but rather the role of council, the decision-making for council. The Municipal Act also sets out the role of head of council, mayor, reeve, whatever the name is in your decision-making documents. And then the Municipal Act sets out the roles of officers and employees, your CAO, your clerk, your chief building official. And so why is this so important? Because members of council are not supposed to make unilateral decisions, are not supposed to insert themselves into the role of staff. And let me just say as a caveat, as I'm speaking to you, I'm giving you general training. Most of you know the rules of the Municipal Act and the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. And when I say you, I'm not referring to issues that have come to my attention with your particular municipality. In fact, in my annual report, I did say that there were no code complaints. However, I think it's really important at this halfway mark in your term to keep in mind that that these issues do creep into your day-to-day, and there is a bit of an imbalance between the role of a staff person and the role of a member of council. So it's important to recognize that that you operate as a body. Where you can get some guidance is the Municipal Councillor's Guide. I believe that when you were all elected, some of you who have been there for a while will recall having gone to training with the ministry where they talk about what your role is. And I'm just quoting from that particular guide, and it says that a councillor may attract inquiries because of his or her background and interests or the issues in a particular area. However, it's important, the province says, to familiarize yourself with any policies or protocols of your municipality to ensure that you minimize the liability of yourself and your municipality in the information that you share with your public. As members, you should not use your influence of office to show preferential treatment. That's a common theme that you'll hear in the Municipal Act, you'll hear in information bulletins from the province, and of course your code of conduct. And it's important to recognize that you have some staff, as you all know, that actually have their own governing legislation. So whether it be a fire chief or a chief building official, if you have lawyers working for you, your clerk, your engineers, these individuals, in addition to being your staff, they are subject matter experts, but they also have their own codes of conduct and rules that they must follow in order to be in good standing in their area of expertise. So it's important to ensure that you take the advice of your subject matter experts. And when there is an issue that bubbles to the top, you go through your CAO, who is the administrative staff person that actually reports directly to you. Next slide, please. So as the Integrity Commissioner, I enforce the code through participation in informal processes. I've had a couple of informal complaints that have come my way since I've become your Integrity Commissioner. And I don't invite people not to file complaints. I don't invite people to file complaints. If an individual or a member of council or a staff person believes that there has been an issue, there's been behavior of a member of council or a local board that they believe has contravened the code, I like to do a first step, which is invite the individual to speak with me if they have already spoken to the member, and identify what they feel has been the issue and where they believe there has been a breach. And I invite them, if possible, to work with my office for me to do some shuttle mediation. So, speak to the individual complainant, speak to the member of council. There might be need for clarification. I might say to the individual, this is not really a code issue. This is an issue that relates to a policy or a bylaw, or I may determine that it's frivolous and vexatious, or I may determine that it's a matter that has been dealt with before. Please rest assured that I know that there are individuals in the community who love their community, but who are out there quite a bit and may on occasion bring forward matters that have already been dealt with, and I recognize that. But informal resolution is a really good way to inform people of what the code deals with and what it doesn't deal with. So your code of conduct is, if we're on the next slide. The code of conduct is about also confidentiality. So if I receive a code complaint, whether it is pursued informally or formally, confidentiality is very important. I am bound as the Integrity Commissioner by confidentiality. So when you come to me, whether you're a member of council, whether you are a local board member, whether you are subject of a complaint, or if you are bringing a complaint, I am required to keep what you say to me confidential. If you're asking me for advice, I keep that confidential. If you want to file a complaint, I have to ensure that your name is not disclosed to the public, but the name of the complainant will be shared with the member of council who is alleged to have breached the code. I cannot bind members of the public. So what I usually say to individuals if they file a complaint is, look, during the investigation, it's most important that confidentiality be maintained. And so I don't take kindly to individuals who like to litigate in the public square, going to the media and sort of putting information out there. We are dealing with the reputations of elected officials and board members. And so I'm not able to prevent a private citizen from in any way talking about the issue, but I certainly, I'm very strong in my caution to individuals that if they're going to try to play this out in the media or the public square, I certainly will take that into consideration when making my findings, or even if I am going to, continue the investigation. So once I determine that there is a bona fide complaint, I give the complaint to the member of council. I give them a certain amount of time to be able to provide me with their comments, their response. I usually look for other information, and then I come up with a balance of probabilities decision, which is based on the information that I have received, speaking to witnesses, looking at the information. It is more likely than not that the member did not breach the code, or it is more likely than not that the member did. I make recommendations either of sanctions or other remedial action, and I provide that report to council, and council determines whether they will implement the sanctions or the remedial action. Cheryl, I'm not seeing the chat, so if there are any questions, please let me know and I'll determine if I will answer them now or leave them till the end. Is that okay?
Good, thank you, sure. And I think that's probably wise. We'll just hold well questions till the end. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next slide, please. So the investigation report, I don't think I really need to say anything here, except we have two streams of code complaints. Prior to 2019, there were the regular code of conduct complaints, and an integrity commissioner could not receive Municipal Conflict of Interest Act complaints. Those would have to be submitted directly to the courts. As of March 2019, integrity commissioners can receive a code of conduct complaint that alleges that a member has, breached the MCIA. So you start off the meeting by saying, were there any pecuniary interest? Well, if there had been a pecuniary interest and a member decided to participate or vote, an individual could file a complaint within 6 weeks of this happening or coming to their attention. And in that case, the integrity commissioner has the powers under the MCIA to investigate. What I do not have is the power to enforce. So if I do receive an MCIA complaint and decide that I will investigate, the decision or my report would be a report to council saying, I am going to court. So I will step into the shoes of the applicant to court and make an application to court. Otherwise, if I'm not dealing with MCIA, the investigation report is a public document. I know that over the years, some integrity commissioners have said that, sometimes there are issues that are sensitive, may deal with harassment or other issues about a staff person. I am of the position, and I believe it is sustained in jurisprudence, that integrity commission reports are public documents. They're submitted to council. Now, if council wants to, in deliberating the integrity commissioner's investigation report, go into closed because there is a matter for which they need legal advice, or there is a matter that relates to a sensitive issue that is covered by confidentiality provisions of your procedural bylaw or the Municipal Act, that in fact is you are at the discretion to do that, but the integrity commissioner rarely, if ever, goes into closed to submit an investigation report. There are only two sanctions, a reprimand and a suspension of pay for up to 90 days. And then under your code, there is the opportunity for the integrity commissioner to recommend remedial action. Next slide, please. So I want to really stress, I'm sure you know, but I can only recommend. I don't think, although I think there was maybe Caledon a couple of years ago had a code of conduct and protocol where the integrity commissioner actually made recommendations and then imposed the penalties if the report was approved by council. My position is that the Municipal Act allows the Integrity Commissioner to make recommendations to you, to council, which could be a reprimand or suspension of pay for up to 90 days, or remedial action such as removal from a committee, removal as chair, repayment of funds if funds were received, or an apology. And council may accept or change. They may decide, yeah, we don't really want to suspend, but we think we'll just have a reprimand, or council may decide to do nothing. The decision to implement the recommendations lies with council. Next slide, please. So we all know that the changes came into effect of the Municipal Act in 2019. What happened? We'll just go on to the next slide. The Integrity Commissioner was given enhanced responsibilities. So in addition to receiving code complaints, the Integrity Commissioner is now able to receive Municipal Conflict of Interest Act complaints. I'm able to provide you advice on code of conduct rules. I'm able to provide you advice as it relates to pecuniary interests. So a member of council may call me or email me and say, you know, I live in such and such a location. There's a planning application and I'd like to know, do I fall into the exception? Am I under section 4? So I have a pecuniary interest, but it is an interest in common with other electors. And so even though I have an interest, may I also vote? What I provide is advice. So I'm able to provide you advice. It is not legal advice. It is Integrity Commissioner advice. And what you may do is rely on that advice. So if there is a challenge to whether or not you had a pecuniary interest, whether it's a board member or a council member, you may rely on the advice that I give you, which will be written advice. I also provide, information as it relates to how the Code of Conduct or the MCIA may intersect with policies of the township, the CAO bylaw, or if there are particular procedural matters, I'm able to provide advice in that regard. I may take direction from council if they would like clarification on a particular rule, or if there are recommendations for change to your code, you may certainly, through your clerk and CAO, use me as a resource if there are new amendments or new issues out there, like there is right now with Justice Morocco's report on the Collingwood inquiry. So again, I see education as really important. The Code of Conduct was put in place, accountability and transparency provisions of the Municipal Act were put in place and came into force to hold members of council accountable. It was because of what happened in the City of Toronto with the Bellamy inquiry and the MFP scandal. But generally speaking, across Ontario, there was a real desire on the part of the public to know how individual members of council and local boards were making decisions. So there's no point in me enforcing rules that you don't understand. And that's why I reiterate that it's so important to have sessions like today, where you just get a refresher, some clarification on what your roles and responsibilities are, because in order to hold someone accountable, they have to know what the rules are. So that's very important to me. Next slide, please. So this slide I put here, not to, belabor the point, but, I can receive MCIA complaints through the code process, the same way that a code, if someone believes that a member of council has, taken a gift that they shouldn't have or what have you, it has to be in writing. And it has to be within 6 weeks of it coming to your attention as a complainant. Sometimes, and the wording of the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act is a little problematic, but that is what it is. And so there is the constructive knowledge versus actual knowledge. So the code requires that any code complaint comes within 6 months. but the MCIA says that the complainant must bring an allegation of breach of the MCIA within 6 weeks of the event. So within 6 weeks of a member of council or local board not declaring a pecuniary interest, not disqualifying themselves, or 6 weeks within which it came to their attention. So it could have been more than 6 weeks from the actual event. The code puts the time limit at 6 months. After that 6 months, a complainant can go to court. Complainant can go to court at any time, but after 6 months, they can only go to court, and a complainant can go to court with an MCIA application up to 6 years. So what the province has done is it's sort of extrapolated the jurisdiction and said, here you go, Integrity Commissioner, you can do sort of a first step to see if there is something there, and you've got a finite amount of time within which you can review this, after which jurisdiction goes fully back to the courts. Next slide, please. And, bane of my existence has been people saying, well, what's a pecuniary interest? I think we've probably got, I don't know, thousands of court decisions on what a pecuniary interest is. And it would have been so helpful, seeing that that's such an important issue for the MCIA to actually define what a pecuniary interest is. It's about money, but it's not that simple. But what does the MCIA define? It defines local boards. So local board members are bound by the rules of the MCIA and also the code, but importantly, the MCIA. We now have a new definition of meeting. So, one of the issues used to be you have to declare at a meeting, and many members used to say in the past, well, what is a meeting? We now have clarification in the legislation, and the pecuniary interest has to be of the member or of their parent, their spouse, and their child. I'll get into it a little bit later. We've got MCIA pecuniary interests that are very restrictive: member of council, member of board, parent of the member, spouse of the member, child of the member. And then we've got code conflicts, which I would rather call bias, and that can affect people, organizations, other relatives. But as it relates to the MCIA, when a member says, well, where do I have to declare an interest? Parent, spouse, child. There are some recommendations out there, but until they become law, these are the rules that you must follow. Next slide, please. So the Section 3 of the MCIA talks about a deemed pecuniary interest, and you all know what that means. It means that, whether or not you think it's a pecuniary interest, if your spouse, parent, or child has a financial interest, they stand to gain or lose money in a particular matter that comes before council or committee or a board meeting, then the law says you have a pecuniary interest. So this is not about, do I have one? If it's your parent, child, or spouse, if they have a financial interest in a meeting, you have a pecuniary interest. As I said with the previous slide, it may be within an exception. So you may have a pecuniary interest because one of those three familial relationships exist, but one of the exceptions in Section 4 applies, which operates to suspend your disqualification. So notwithstanding the fact that you have a pecuniary interest, you can still participate, you can still vote. Rule of thumb, ask your integrity commissioner. There's a body out there and you can certainly make the decision on your own. What you can't do is ask your clerk or your CAO. They are required to not provide you advice on these matters, but I'm always available to provide that information. Next slide, please. I'll just go quickly through this. The MCIA contraventions are enforced by the courts. So individual believes that you should have declared a pecuniary interest at a board meeting, at a local board meeting, or at council. They bring forward a complaint to me. I determine whether or not there are grounds to investigate. I investigate. I find that there has, in my view, been a breach of the MCIA. I make a report to council. I let them know I think that there is a breach of the MCIA and I am making an application to court. Then it is up to the judge to review that matter, decide if they're even going to review that matter, and then the court will decide if you have breached the MCIA. The Integrity Commissioner does not have that authority. And what has happened with the amendments to the MCIA is the penalties that a court can now impose on a member of council or local board are broader. It used to be, if you remember, with that former and the late Mayor Ford, if you've breached the MCIA, you're unseated. Now the courts can be less draconian. They can issue a reprimand. They can require or order repayment of funds, many other remedial actions, and also remove from office with a disqualification of running for office for 7 years. Next slide, please. So, rule of thumb. If you have a pecuniary interest, or you think you do, ask your integrity commissioner. If you act on my recommendations, it is a saving provision. So even if someone takes it to court and you are found to have had a pecuniary interest, the court will take into consideration that you asked for advice from the integrity commissioner and you relied on that advice. So if you have a pecuniary interest, don't participate in discussions, not just at that meeting, but any meetings where that matter will be discussed, and declare your pecuniary interest at each step. So committee and finance and council, and if it's a planning matter at the public meeting, and all of those meetings where that issue or that matter or where you have a pecuniary interest. Don't attempt to influence staff. I've had members of council say, well, if I just ask a question, is that influencing staff? The Municipal Act and the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act, and more importantly, accountability and transparency, is about how decisions are made, and where we look at pecuniary interests, where you're trying to gain financially or not lose financially. Asking questions of staff is always okay. If you're not pressuring them, asking questions is all right. And certainly I have never looked at the code as an impediment to doing your job or to wanting to know. But there is a difference between asking and influencing. And if you need clarification on that, I can provide that to you. You don't get to vote if you have a pecuniary interest. If it is a public meeting, we now have Zoom. It's a little difficult now because I'm sure your clerk has given you guidelines, and maybe you even have a bylaw of how you remove yourself. If we were in council chambers, some people would just go to the gallery where the public was. Some members of council or local board members actually left the room. There is nothing really in law that requires you to leave the room, and I would say that it's a good thing to do because that surely shows that you're not influencing or voting, but you don't have to. If it's a closed meeting, you do have to leave the meeting, so you have to log off if you are doing Zoom. And if you were away for the meeting, you must declare and make that declaration known in your registry of declarations at the next meeting. Next slide, please. So I think we've gone over this. MCIA penalties are a reprimand, a suspension of up to 90 days. The judge can actually provide and impose these penalties, can require that the member's seat be vacated and suspend participating in any elections for up to 7 years. The saving provisions are if the court says that you had a pecuniary interest, but you actually participated and voted because of inadvertence or an error in judgment. And in addition to that, one of the saving provisions is you sought, received, and acted on the advice of the Integrity Commissioner. Next slide, please. So what is the difference between an MCIA conflict and a code of conduct conflict? Well, I would probably have to come back and give you another hour on that. I wish the legislation was clearer, and I truly wish that you didn't always have to come to me. And if it's clear in your mind, I'm really happy about that. But I certainly understand the predicament that you often find yourself in because you live in a township, you know people, and I often get the statement, well, I was elected to actually do a job, and I know a lot of people. And when I was running for office, or when I asked to be appointed to this board, they knew that I had the desire to ensure that there were setbacks from the cottages, or they knew that I wanted to make sure I was in favor of development. So, how is it fair for people to now say that if I have a bias that people know of, I can't participate in the very activities that I was elected or appointed to oversee and participate in? And so what I can say is that a pecuniary interest is not defined by the MCIA, but there are a whole bunch of court cases and there is jurisprudence that allows an integrity commissioner to be able to look at your situation and say, look, based on these court cases, based on the jurisprudence out there, I believe you have a pecuniary interest for this reason. I actually think that you don't fall within any of the exceptions, so it is my recommendation that you don't participate. So that is usually pretty straightforward. Code bias or prejudgment is a little bit more difficult, but there are also court cases out there which state very clearly what that looks like. So I've just taken for my own work a couple of really important cases out there. Impartiality, says the court, is a statement of mind in which the counselor is disinterested in the outcome and is open to persuasion. So you're pretty good if you're open to persuasion. So even if you stated, I think that the township needs more development, that doesn't mean you're impartial. You're not impartial. That doesn't mean that you're not opening to listen to other people. But you have to be very mindful that the prejudgment is real or perceived, and so a code complaint can come forward saying that the member of council has a closed mind. They've actually decided before they even came to council. And is that an ethical breach? Yes, it is. According to your code and according to many court cases out there, it is. So what should you do? You should always be open to persuasion. State your position, but state also that you respect the reports of staff. You acknowledge that staff may sometimes have positions that are contrary to what your public statement is. So try to not make enshrined public statements. I shall not, I will never. That is something that would never happen, because that identifies a statement of mind that you are not impartial. What is bias? Bias denotes a state of mind also that is in some way predisposed to a particular result, or that is closed on a particular issue. I have the example of many years ago with a member of council who ran on the platform of no more plastic bags, only paper bags in all stores. And then became a member of council where the matter came before council, and this particular counselor listened to all of the various input, the business owners who came in and said what cost that would be to their organization, environmentalist, the staff who provided an indication of how this would roll out. And at the end of the day, the member of council actually said, I vote in favor of no more plastic bags. And a code complaint came forward and said, well, they were biased. They never wanted to have, plastic bags. They said so on the campaign trail, and there you go. What I saw was that a member of council had a position, an opinion, and the code does not preclude you from having an opinion. And the member of council listened earnestly and asked questions during the town hall meetings and the committee meetings and the council meetings. And then the member of council made a decision. So based on my review of the facts, the member of council was not biased. The member of council had a position, but I did not believe, based on the review of the facts, that there was a state of mind that was predisposed only to not have plastic bags. Can that be challenged? Sure can, but my investigations are pretty thorough. So, be mindful of what you say in public and always keep an open mind. Next slide, please. So how do you avoid MCIA, pecuniary conflicts of interest, and code conflicts? Well, there's some steps that you can take. The MCIA says that if your family member has a pecuniary interest that you know of, it's a deemed pecuniary interest. So you may not know what your parent or child is doing. I would say sometimes I don't know what my spouse is doing, but the Act actually says that you are bound if you know. So find out what your family members are doing. Look at the agendas before they come, before the meeting date. Speak to me, as I said, as a resource. You may seek independent legal advice, and look at the minutes to make sure that if you've declared a conflict, that it's in your registry, and make sure that you leave a room for closed meetings if you have a pecuniary interest. Next slide, please. So the role of council members is a little different than the role of board members. A council member actually sets policy. You have a fiduciary duty to ensure that you are stewards of the public purse, and you are representatives of your constituents, which is all of the township. Now, does that mean that you cannot represent a particular position of a local group, or a position that has been communicated by a group of individuals? Of course, you may. You are a representative of all of the township, including small groups, but you are not the advocate of small groups. You are not the legal counsel of small groups. And it goes without saying that you cannot provide information that is confidential that you have received in your capacity as an elected official to individuals in the community if it was provided to you in your capacity as a member of council and in confidence. Next slide, please. Which brings us to closed meetings. Over the years, I've had a couple of code complaints where a member of council has very forcefully said, look, I didn't think we should have gone into closed session. I believe the public has a right to know, and my colleagues decided to go into closed session, and I believe that this is unfair to the public. And so after the confidential discussion in closed, I went and told the public. Well, that is absolutely unlawful and contrary to the code. And I get it. And as I said to the member of council at the time, it was several years ago, it happened a couple of times, understand the reasoning, but a justification for breaching the closed meeting rules and your code of conduct is not the public needed to know. You have an opportunity as members of council and local board members to try to convince your colleagues. It is a democratic system, and I understand that sometimes there's schisms in the council or the board, but that's your political meat there. You have to try to convince your colleagues if you believe that this is a matter that should not be enclosed. But your procedural bylaw says that if it's been legitimately discussed and closed, it remains confidential, a matter until such time as the municipality decides it is public. So your code underscores the importance that all information, documentation, deliberation, emails, letters, if it is discussed in a closed session, it is confidential. I had the very problematic situation a little while ago where there was a discussion in closed, and then one of the individuals who was party to the litigation, a member of the public, then talked about it in the public. Said this was going on and that was going on, and the matter was still in litigation. And the member of council then also started talking about it in the public square. And then a code complaint came forward. And the outcome was that the member was found in breach of the code. And the member said, well, how is that fair? So we discussed something in closed. The other party goes out and talks about it as long as they want. And I am held accountable and told that I've done something wrong because I talk about it. To be clear, the Code of Conduct speaks to the requirement of members of council and local board members to maintain the confidentiality of a matter that is discussed in closed until such time as the municipality renders it public. So it's very possible that a member of the public can, talk about stuff that, may not be necessarily correct. And the fact that they're raising issues that were also discussed in closed does not waive a member's obligation to maintain the confidentiality. Next slide, please. These slides are just talking about the importance of confidentiality. So if I were to say, you know, what are the most important things about a code of conduct regime? I would say that it is important for members of council and local board members to understand what the rules are and what they're required to do and why. You may ask yourself, well, I guess I have to remove myself from that meeting, but why? So what I spend a lot of time doing when I provide advice is explain the why, either the legal why or the policy discussions, the Hansard report comments as to why we are here. Why is there a need for a code of conduct? And then I would say confidential information is so vitally important to be kept because of the reputation of the township, because of the reputation of your staff, because of the inordinate amount of litigation that could happen if information is unlawfully disclosed. And it is the integrity of the work that you do. Once the town council or the local board as a whole decides to consider a matter confidentially, then unless it's reversed, it must be kept confidential. Next slide, please. So the prohibition of not disclosing confidential information flows from your obligation as a municipality to adhere to provincial statute. So you all know about the Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. You want to ensure that while you are governed by the Municipal Act, your discussions and disclosure of those discussions don't then breach another piece of legislation, MFIPA. So if you're talking about an identifiable individual or you're talking about an employee and perhaps labor relations, you're talking about litigation, there is an overlay of MFIPA that interplays with the rules of the Municipal Act. And there are exceptions to confidentiality or privacy in MFIPA, but your staff will be able to provide you with that understanding. It's not just about, it was a closed meeting and my colleague councillors, my colleague local board members didn't want to discuss it in public. There are several things at play. There's litigation privilege, there's privacy, there's an importance of understanding how these all work together. And it's important to understand the serious consequences of disclosing a matter that is confidential. Next slide, please. I'll speak very briefly on this slide. Last week, Justice Frank Morocco released the Collingwood inquiry report. It's a great read. I enjoy reading these inquiries, but I will underscore it is not law. So it is an inquiry that a judge conducted on a matter that happened in Collingwood as it related to lobbying of a then member of council by a relative. And Mr. Justice Morocco has come up with many recommendations, and he has underscored some things that are already in law and are part of many codes of conduct, which is the importance of confidential information. Whether it is information about an identifiable individual or litigation or a matter before LPAT, or otherwise legal, it is the reputation, the integrity, and the financial risk of the township that is at stake here. Next slide. So high level, democracy is an active process. It requires ongoing engagement between citizens and elected officials. You are elected, you are appointed, you are held to a higher standard and scrutiny. Ethics and integrity are the core of public confidence, and it is the purpose of your code of conduct and the rules enshrined in the code of conduct to establish rules that guide your actions and behavior. And sometimes there are diverse roles and there are different perspectives, but you act as a body. And in order for the public to maintain trust in the decision-making and the decisions of council, of the board, and the township as a whole, it's important to act as one voice, and it's important to not leak information. It's important to find out why that information is confidential, and it's important to maintain the integrity of your decision-making process. Next slide, please. So I will end here because we're running out of time, and I could talk forever, and that's what I've been told, apparently. I talk a lot, but I like people to know, I like people to know stuff. So I will end here just by saying that your annual report, I stated that there were very few issues of integrity that were triggered by any members of council. I received no formal complaints. So from my perspective, you are in good standing, and I would like that to continue. Proactively seek out advice, and please review all of these slides. And I thank you for your attention today.
Thank you, Suzanne. I made a lot of notes. Thank you very much for that information. It was a great update and good reminders. And I would ask now, I guess, to take the presentation down there to the committee. I'm going to ask the committee if you have any thoughts, observations, questions of Suzanne. This would be a perfect environment to do that. So please feel free to put your hand up. I don't see any. Oh, so there's the mayor, Mayor Harding.
Thank you. I didn't use my blue hand, but just want to say, Suzanne, thank you for not only a detailed report today. It is always, as Chair Zavitz commented, a great reminder for us all. We deal with highly sensitive information at any given time, and the perception of the public as how we conduct ourselves or whatever is paramount and should be paramount. Even if it's not an official conflict of interest, we need to be super careful about that. And I really do appreciate what you've brought to this municipality as in your new role as our integrity commissioner. You have certainly added value. I know I've interacted with you on a district matter at one point, and I appreciate that in your forthright answers, yes or no, and helping us better understand. So thank you for that, and keep up the good work from my perspective.
Good, thank you. Councillor Hayes.
Yeah, thank you. That was an excellent presentation. I do have one question, and that is we have two councillors that are assigned to our local library board. The library board answers to a different set of rules. So is that included under the integrity commissioner, or is that autonomous and it answers to the library ministry?
So thank you very much, Councillor Hayes. In its wisdom, the province has this carve out, and it says local boards are governed by the code of conduct except for these. So the police board, the library board. So a short answer to your question, library board is governed by its own set of rules. However, if a member of council who has been appointed to the library board in his or her capacity as a councillor runs afoul of the code, then I may receive that code of conduct, but I cannot govern any of the other action of the library board members.
Okay, good, thank you. Two things I noted, I see no other hands. We operate as a body, and the other one that I thought was particularly relevant was confidential information remains the property of the Township of Muskoka Lakes. I think that's, good for us to remember daily. So thank you very much for that, Suzanne. With no other questions or comments, I will thank you very much, sincerely.
One question, one short statement.
Go ahead.
This is a shameless plug for your clerk, who is tirelessly working with me. This woman, I send her email. She is always liaising. I have to say my work is made easy by Cheryl Mortimer. So I'm sorry, Cheryl, but I got to give it to you. Thank you for all you do.
She's got a perma-press smile on her face. Thank you very much for that, because certainly we need to recognize these efforts by staff, and of course, it all feeds into helping us streamline and move forward in an efficient manner. So, could Cheryl say, please, Cheryl, go ahead.
I just wanted to say that it's mutual.
We love each other. Yay!
Okay, there's that. Good. Thank you very much, Suzanne.
All right, thank you. Good day.
Have a good day. Okay, so we're going to, it's 10 o'clock. We have POMAX limited to attend to read the fire master plan update, John Hambides. And I'm referring to report item 7A. Is John here? Is he, we just let him in? Good, thank you. So I'm not sure if Ryan, Fire Chief Morrell wants to do any kind of a preamble or introduction, or you're certainly welcome to do that. Thank you.
Good morning, Council. I would like to do the little bit of the preamble to kind of explain what John's purpose is for today. There's a report in front of you detailed 7A. This report provides a summary of the process to update the fire master plan for the Township of Muskoka Lakes. The current master fire plan, as you know, was completed in 2013, and given that most of its recommendations have been addressed and new provincial risk assessment regulatory requirements exist, we will be looking at the master fire plan and reviewing it against the 10-year capital budget in detail. On May 13th of this year, Council endorsed the recommendation of myself to issue a request for proposal, and the issuance was given to POMAX Consulting. At the August 12th meeting, Council then awarded the Fire Master Plan consultancy. Continuous improvement of our fire service must be undertaken in a manner that assesses risk and addresses various and unique needs of our community, including the ability to provide fire protection services in a fiscally responsible manner. The review and update to the Master Fire Plan is intended to address these needs and meet the intent of the new regulations. POMAX Consulting proposes to complete the review and update of the Master Fire Plan as follows. Phase 1 is data gathering, sorry. A review of information gathering and inventory of the current human and infrastructure assets of the fire department. That is ongoing today. Phase 2 is the current state evaluation. This is a risk analysis of the fire protected area, an economic, demographic, and infrastructure change forecast to present to Council as well. Phase 3 is conducting a gap analysis between the fire department's current assets and current risk. The gap might be positive, negative, or neutral. Conducting a future needs analysis is in Phase 4. This is when a relationship assessment of the fire department's assets and capabilities currently against expected needs at the end of the Master Fire Plan period. A determination of the level of fire and protection that is needed and required will be made at this point, taking into account the economic realities. A determination of what changes will need to take place for the fire department to achieve the level of protection envisioned by Council and administration will also take part in Phase 4. The cost associated with any change that might be required and the timing of those costs will be presented in Phase 4. And then Phase 5 is a draft fire master plan. This is a delivery of the draft fire master plan to this committee and hopefully an edited and finalized draft master fire plan to be presented to Council for approval. In Appendix 1, there's an illustration of the work plan and highlights the key touch points. At this time, I'd like to turn over my commentary to John Hambides, for his detailed analysis of each of the phases and to really open up the floor for questions of this Council.
Okay, thanks, Ryan. Hello, thank you for having me here. Actually, Ryan covered a lot of this really well. I do have a graphic I'd like to show you. You might be familiar with it, but it will explain the process that we're going through, and then we can answer any questions that you may wish. So if you don't mind, I'm just going to show you my screen.
Can you do that?
Host disabled participant sharing. Okay. Apparently my screen can't be shared. So let me just talk you through it. As Ryan said, the first part.
We will make that happen.
Okay, thank you. So I'll continue talking, and then if somebody could let me know when it's enabled, I'll share the screen.
Yeah, please do. It'll just take a minute or two to get up. Thank you.
Okay. We're in the data collection phase now. There's a lot of data. It includes GIS information, data about the housing and the distribution of housing across the township. We're also looking at the response data from the past 5 years, which will indicate to us what the response has been like and where those responses have taken place, and to see if there's any patterns. We're also in the process of doing a community risk analysis, and that's another group of data gathering to determine what the risk is within the community. So that's into phase 2. Although we've got this laid out as phases.
Sorry, John, go ahead and
Yeah.
access that through your screen now. Thank you.
Okay, terrific, thanks. It's still telling me I can't.
That's possible.
Okay.
So, Carrie,
One more try. Ah, there we go. Okay.
we're giving you all the power we can.
That's great. Thank you. Okay, so are you seeing the graphic on the screen with the work plan and schedule?
Yes, we are.
Okay. So this is the part I'm talking about right now, is conducting the current state evaluation. The timelines aren't precise anymore. We're into the week of November the 9th, and we're probably a week behind, but we're not changing that at this point because we figure we'll catch up. So we're into the data collection part now in the community risk analysis, and that will enable us later in here to be able to say whether there's a gap in the resources versus community risk analysis, and whether there will be some impact on future needs. The next phase, starting right about now or in the next week or so, is the gap analysis. This will flow from one to another. They won't be distinct demarcations, because some of the work we do in these phases will inform future phases and so on. So it's much more of a flow than it appears here. After we finish the gap analysis, and this will tell us whether the resources are suitable for the type of risk and the incident types that are occurring in your community, then we'll move on to future needs. And this is the planning part about what's going to happen over the next 5 to 10, even into 30 years when it comes to things like capital expenditures. And it brings forward the idea as much of a strategy and as of a plan, because this starts getting into areas where council and the committees will have to make decisions about what kind of emergency service and what method of emergency service and prevention, particularly prevention and planning, will be required and what they want to approve. It all also influences cost. And there's some investment in future years. And then we get into finalization of the master plan. There'd be at least one draft, probably 2 drafts, opportunity for comments, and opportunity for stakeholders to indicate their impressions. And then we'll get to finalizing the master plan and presentation to council. And we would expect at that point council endorsement. So there's the sort of the 3 to 5 minute précis of what we're doing, and be happy to answer any questions or if there's any comments.
Can we get the screen down?
Yeah.
Good, thank you. Okay, I don't see any questions. Committee, any thoughts or observations? Councillor Hayes, go ahead.
Yes, through you, this question is to either Ryan or John. In your collection of data, will you be interviewing the the counselors for some historical information that may be relevant to why things are the way they are?
I'm gonna leave this question to John.
Short answer is yes. And I can expand on that if you wish, but sometimes people just want a short answer.
Short is good, thank you.
Okay, welcome.
Others? Okay, good. I see no others. So thank you very much, John and Ryan, for that. We'll be hearing from you, Ryan, as we get to item 7A later in this meeting. So thank you, John.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time and great presentation. So thank you. I'm going to move on now to item 4B number 2, which is Gloria Gardner and Carol Mitchell relating to a Muskoka Lakes pickleball delegation to attend a request for an indoor winter pickleball around COVID-19. There we are. Okay, good. I guess you can go right ahead. You have the floor, Gloria and Carol. Can you hear us? Carol, you're on mute.
Sorry, I don't see Gloria on yet.
She's here.
Okay, Gloria is going to start.
Okay, Gloria, you good? You're on mute.
I'll text her, sorry.
Okay,
There you go. Good, thank you.
should I proceed?
Go ahead.
Thank you.
You're live.
Good morning, all you members of the Finance and General Committee. Thank you so much for giving us an opportunity to meet with you this morning. My name is Gloria Gardner, and I've lived in Port Sandfield since 1981, year-round, raised my family here.
You've muted again.
Good to go again?
There we go. You're good.
Okay, I'm not sure how I ended up that way. So I'll take it quickly from the top. Gloria Gardner is my name. I'm from Port Sandfield, and I'm speaking to you today on behalf of Muskoka Lakes Pickleball. Last time I addressed council was the spring of 2019, and at that time we asked you to come on board with us to allow our senior pickleball players 80 and over to play for free in our facilities, and we also asked you if we could introduce the game to young players at no expense. And I'm happy to tell you that we did have 67 children come out and try the game of pickleball during that summer of 2019 after you approved free admission for them. And we look forward to spreading this multi-generational game even further afield once we have full use of the township facilities again. Now, I have attempted to retire from the committee side of pickleball a couple of times, but I find myself back here again today because some of our new committee members are living out of the township at this time of year. However, even with the lockdown of the facilities necessitated by COVID-19, pickleball players have been coming out, I think it's safe to say, in droves to the outdoor facilities at Walker's Point and Milford Bay. And so we thank you for allowing the lines to be painted on some of those courts and for allowing the nets to stay up even longer, because we've continued to play even as recently as yesterday, and some are coming out even again today. But although we have continued to play outdoors to this point, the weather is changing even today, and that's the reason that we'd like to speak with you. And I'm going to turn this over to Carol Mitchell now.
Thank you, Gloria. I just want to thank the council for allowing us to speak today. My name is Carol Mitchell. I'm myself and my family have lived in Port Carling for 26 years. I'm a retired provincial prosecutor from the Crown Attorney's Office, and my husband's a retired OPP officer, and we're both avid pickleball players. I also want to thank the township once again, as Gloria already has, for keeping the nets up in Milford Bay and Walker's Point, and we remain outdoors playing as almost every day. After COVID-19 forced us to close the Milford Bay Community Center in March, we were sent outside to play, and myself have played almost every morning, and there was never a day that we didn't have pickleball players out at Milford Bay, as well as extra players. Some Saturdays we would go and we would have over 16 to 20 people there. With the weather changing, we wish to continue to play and hope we can utilize the Bala Arena to accomplish this. I've been in contact with Diane Wibber at the Bracebridge Sportsplex, and she's in charge of the pickleball there. As of September 14th, they've offered indoor pickleball, 2 courts with a maximum of 12 people in the room that pickleball is played in. As of November 9th, they now are only allowing 10 people because of the Simcoe Muskoka have strengthened the measures. She advised that pickleball is played every day except Sunday, with 2, 3, and 4 time slots each day. The time slots are 2 hours in length. They have no drop-ins, and you have to pre-book to play. They are always filled to capacity each day and have a waiting list as well. And they've had no COVID-19 cases with any pickleball players since they opened in September. They have a waiver that each player must sign before playing, and they do contact tracing. I was also in contact with Kathy Just from Gravenhurst, who organized pickleball at the Gravenhurst Curling Club this summer. They played from August 1st to September 30th. They played every day except Sunday. They played Monday through Saturday, 9:30 to 12, and Tuesday and Thursday evenings, 6 to 8. They had 5 courts, and they had 20 to 30 people each average every day indoors. They allowed people to drop in during the day, and there was no reported COVID-19 cases amongst those pickleball players. They also had a waiver that each player must sign before playing, and they also did contact tracing. I then contacted Jessica Smith at the Huntsville Summit Center, who is in the process of making submissions to have pickleball played indoors there. She explained that people will register for 5 weeks, only 10 people at this time, and there are 4 courts, and they will play Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, 9 to 12 and 12:30 to 3, as well as possibly 2 evenings a week. Both Gloria and I have received and reviewed the Ontario Pickleball Association return to play recommendations, as well as the Ontario new COVID shutdown system and pickleball. I'd be happy to send the link to the documents if you wish to see those. The majority of our players are seniors, and we are aware that we are in a vulnerable category, and we have all taken extra steps to be safe through this pandemic. We have all been playing outdoors in the same bubbles throughout the spring and summer and fall at Milford Bay and Walker's Point. So our plan that we'd like to propose is that we play 2.5-hour time slots Monday to Friday, 9 to 11:30, 12:30 to 3, and on Tuesdays and Thursday evenings, 6:30 to 9, Saturdays, 9 to 11:30, and 12:30 to 3. The players will have to sign up by email for a time to play as they want, at the time that they want to play each week, with contact information for each player for COVID tracing. All players will sign a waiver. They will have to provide that the first time they play, and it will be kept on file. There will be 10 players per time slot, including what we've decided on, a volunteer facilitator for each time slot who will ask the COVID screening questions of each player when they arrive. As well, the volunteer facilitator will be responsible to ensure that the COVID protocols are complied with while in the building. Sanitizer will be at the door when the players arrive, and they must sanitize their hands prior to entry and before leaving the building. 10 chairs, 6 feet apart on the arena floor, so each player has a chair to put their items on, such as water bottles, coats, boots. Each player will be required to sanitize that chair with sanitizing wipes that will be provided to them before leaving the building, and that will be provided to them. Masks will be worn at all times while not playing. Sanitizer will be provided for their hands before and after each play of game. They must have their own paddle to play. Balls will be sanitized before and after each game. They'll maintain a distance of 6 feet at all times. We will also ask players to have their own sanitizer with them when they enter the building. The protocols that we have listed include everything that Mr. Ken Becking, the Director of Public Works, told us we would be required to follow should we be permitted to use the Bala Arena. We've canvassed the players who played in Milford Bay Community Center up until this March, and over 60 people have replied that they would be interested in playing throughout the winter at the Bala Arena. 18 people have agreed to be volunteer facilitators. With that being said, Gloria and I have agreed that we will have a Zoom meeting with these facilitators to go through the protocol and what will be expected of them. We as the pickleball community really wish that you would allow us the opportunity to use the Bala Arena to remain physically and mentally healthy. Thank you for this time. And if you have any questions, we're ready to answer any.
Thank you, Carol. A couple of things. I'm going to turn this over to our Director of Public Works, Ken Becking. I guess a couple of thoughts on this is that, I think what will come out of here for certain is that we'll be asking for a staff report to come back to this committee next month, as that is the purview here. We recommend it to council things. And so I would defer that. I know that the Bala Arena isn't heated, so it isn't insulated. So, I mean, there are many, many considerations here. We certainly appreciate your appeal. And I'm going to turn this over to Director Becking for his thoughts and move this along. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I would suggest that staff take the presentation from the deputants and review it. As some or all of you may be aware, the province has recently made a significant change to their guidance documents and protocols. Frankly, information is still not been formally provided. And so we're still feeling our way through what this new regime may mean for us. So in that light, then I would suggest that the matter be referred to staff, and we'll hopefully work with the province and the deputants to see how we might be able to accommodate them.
Good, thank you. I wonder if I could ask you to send your presentation, Carol, and I suppose, Gloria, your words, your presentation to Director Becking, so kbecking@muskokalakes.ca. It would be important for us to have that documentation, if you will, your presentation. That would be helpful. Sorry? And to the clerk, yes, certainly C. Mortimer at muskokalakes.ca. To those two individuals here at staff. I'm wondering as well if we would, as a committee, request a staff report that could go directly to council next month, December, in that it speaks to timing and a certain urgency that I'm certainly perceiving. Committee, what would you sort of a nodding of heads that would be something you'd be okay with, or do we want to go in a different direction? I see Councillor Bridgman has her hand up. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chair Zavitz. This was before you asked for that yes, no. First of all, I think it was a great report. Thank you both. You've done tremendous homework here. I just, out of curiosity, have one question. I know you're referencing Bracebridge, but the facility that pickleball is played in there, is that also have other facilities? So I guess what I'm trying to get at, this is an up and running facility already where they play in Bracebridge. That's a question, I guess, to either you, Gloria, or you, Carol.
Yes, it is. It's at the Bracebridge Sportsplex.
So it's a bit of a different scenario than what's being asked for here. And I know we're going to get a staff report on that, but it was a good report.
Good, thank you. Any other committee members have a thought? Okay, then I'm going to move this along. I'm going to thank you both for attending today and expressing your interest. We'll take that under advisement and create a staff report that will go directly to council in the December cycle. Okay?
Can I just make one comment with your comment, sir?
Sure, go ahead, Carol.
We are fully aware that the Gravenhurst, that the Bala Arena is unheated. if you saw us out playing in the past couple of days in Milford Bay, we are fully aware of all of that. We do have our mittens and our gloves and, you know, warm items to wear. And so we were fully aware that the Bala Arena is not heated. So we're fully prepared for that as
Good.
well.
Good, thank you very much. I think, and as Councillor Bridgman indicated, you know, we'll get a full staff report and hopefully it'll be inclusive. It will be, and certainly then we can consider this item at that time. So again, thank you, ladies. Thank you very much. Thanks for bringing that forward. And I'm going to move along now to the next item. But I think what I'll do, I think before we move on to Nora Fountain, the Executive Director of Muskoka Lakes Chamber of Commerce, I think, Nora, if I might, I'd like to take a 10-minute break, and then that'll get us into your presentation, which will then get us to 11 o'clock, in which we will be doing a brief pause there as well in acknowledgement of that. So if that works for everyone, let's get back here at about 10:40, and we could begin hearing from the Chamber of Commerce. Thank you. Okay, good.
Frank and Gord are not.
We're waiting, Councillor Jaglowitz, Councillor Roberts.
We do have 8, so if you want to start.
Okay, I'm going to get you going, Nora. Do you have a presentation, some PowerPoint or some slides you want to present?
No, because we sent materials ahead, we're just going to talk.
Okay, good. So please go ahead.
All right, thank you.
Welcome.
Good morning, Chair and Councillors. I'm Nora Fountain, representing the Chamber at 3181 Muskoka Road, 169 in Bala. I'm here today to give you a brief overview of what your local chamber has accomplished during this difficult year. A yearly update is included as part of our agreement with Township for the services we deliver. In your agenda packages, you'll find 3 items. The first includes the results of our agreed upon 2020 work plan. We've also given you a draft annual report, which provides a more detailed year in review and description of the marketing campaigns we produced. The third item is the 2021 work plan, which your ECDev officer suggested we include, especially as it touches on a few new items that we plan to roll out in 2021. This builds on 2020 with the new highlights, such as the plan to develop a new online marketplace for Muskoka Lakes, our Embrace the Chill winter marketing, and an all-season campaign to support our year-round economy. Quickly, I'd like to speak to some of our major accomplishments in 2020. First, the Chamber is most proud of the advocacy and leadership we demonstrated in helping support our local businesses as COVID hit and as the pandemic continues. Early on, we recognized our businesses might not fit with some of the programs that were out there, so it took weeks of lobbying to turn your Chamber's idea into reality. I'm talking about the Muskoka Business Recovery Fund and the task force as well. 17 businesses in Muskoka Lakes accessed that fund. We also asked the federal government to make relief funds open to nonprofits. And together with our partners at the Ontario Chamber, we asked for changes to the rent relief program, and we're pleased to see that those changes are now in the works. While this advocacy is technically not part of the services we provide directly on behalf of Township, it was necessary to help our local economy. We were also pleased to take part in a subcommittee of the Township's ECDev committee to help produce your new economic development strategy. Second was our determination to open our Visitor Information Center, which is definitely part of the services we agree to provide for you. Centers in Bracebridge and Gravenhurst never opened. Neither did the Ontario Travel Centers like the one in Barrie, but we worked with our MPP, the Health Unit, and the Ministry of Tourism to successfully gain permission to open our center, citing it as an essential service for our region. We began allowing limited access to visitors in May until we gained approval to fully open on July 1. Certainly people were always parked outside using our public Wi-Fi, another service included in our Chamber Township agreement. Thirdly, but equally important, we felt it imperative that we proceed with local tourism and extra shop local marketing efforts. That includes the radio and TV, Great Places to See campaign featuring Bala, the National Post campaign featuring Port Carling to replace Midday Madness, and 11 other digital marketing campaigns instead of the planned 4, most of which profiled local businesses across sectors, everyone from Ted Smith Construction in Bala over to Windermere House and to Brooklyn Farms in Milford Bay, to name just a few. Looking at our 2020 work plan, you can see there are a few areas that we could not deliver on, and some areas where we show expectations were actually exceeded. Where we couldn't deliver, we pivoted to other ways, often virtually, of achieving similar goals. Take the Spotlight on Muskoka Lakes, for example. We couldn't hold that as an in-person event, obviously, so we worked really hard to profile, to put a spotlight, if you will, on our businesses. We took workshops online. We tried very hard to save the Santa Claus parades by offering modifications. When the health unit said no, we quickly built santavisits.ca, which will be the jumping off online spot for a virtual holiday message parade for groups across Muskoka Lakes, and give children and their families a chance to still have their annual visit and photo with Santa. Finally, the Cottage Country Spirit, the fall and summer campaign, that helped push awareness of Muskoka Lakes way up. And you'll see we're still leading in social media engagement as compared to other chambers. We're way, way ahead. Perhaps the only tactic we missed was the Christmas market. Although we had vendors sold out long before even COVID hit, it's very popular. But we believe our November Give the Gift of Local campaign is a way of replacing it. And as for attracting people in the off season, when the health unit says it's safe for us to attract people from beyond our borders to come back, that'll be acted on through our new Embrace the Chill campaign. The work plan results that you have are straightforward, and we hope you'll appreciate the greater detail provided in our annual report draft. Please don't hesitate to contact me once you've had time to digest those documents. And once we know more about what our partners are doing, we'll be able to finalize the draft 2021 work plan. Thank you for this opportunity to bring you up to speed on what your chamber's been up to. I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have them now.
Excellent. Thank you, Nora. Good presentation. And thank you for all the documentation, because I know it was some very good reading. Of course, both past, present, and what the future holds. So I would ask committee, I don't see any show of hands. I don't see any hands. Nobody. There's one, Councillor Hayes. Go right ahead.
Through you to Nora. Excellent presentation. I was wondering, with the highlighted businesses that we did see on the TV and in other areas, have they reported any flow of increased market because of that? Or is it too early to tell?
Well, it's not even that it's too early to tell. It's been a really difficult season to gauge. For example, I'll take one example of one business that was up 200% in sales, but they didn't have the greatest year in 2019 or 2018 as they were just sort of opening up and getting going. So while they were up in sales, they still weren't where they wanted to be. And some businesses talked about having like a lot of traffic, and we also had a lot of people around. Others said September was actually a better month, like clothing boutiques seemed to do better in September. Whether that was because of sales, I'm not sure. So as for whether they got a direct lift from radio and television campaign, that's always very difficult because it's a general awareness. We can't measure that as well. Certainly we can measure more closely the digital campaigns. We can see which campaigns had more engagement, but you brought up a really good point about us surveying our members to see if they did feel that there was a direct lift resulting from all of the marketing campaign they did. We certainly got a lot of thank yous, but we don't have hard data because we can't follow that right down to the cost per sale. For example, we can drive people to their businesses, but we can't necessarily make them buy. That's why in our annual report we look at things like how much the average sale is per head. And then we take, if we only take 100 people, how much would that have turned into putting it into the local economy? If you take a look at Muskoka Lakes Farm and Winery, for example, while they kept their crowds at a minimum, but people were walking out with cases of wine this year, like really stocking up. So they had really large sales. So it's a good question about how we could potentially survey to see if anybody felt they had sales lift directly connected to our campaigns. Thank you for that.
Thank you. And it is kind of a case of wine type of year.
Or two, yes, exactly. Other committee comments? Well, you've done a great job, Nora. Your group, wonderful profile, being a social media person. You're always there, and I think that's a testament to your effort. I mean, you're doing so much more than social media, but it all follows that it leads the message, and the message is we're open for business. And thank you for that. So hopefully you'll see that in continued support from this township.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so appreciate your time here today, Nora. Thanks a lot. I'm going to move on to 5A, which is on the agenda, which is Public Works. Report from Director of Public Works, Ken Becking, as it relates to access controls at the Huckleberry Rock Trail Property. Ken?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of committee. The report before you is as a result of your direction at the last meeting regarding concerns with illegal access via motorized vehicles to the rock. At present, there are 3 accesses to township lands and 1 access to private lands, which then give direct access to the rock. Except for the recent event with respect to a off-road camper gaining access to the rock, the majority of the complaints that our research indicates are of a variety of ATVs accessing the rock, and also with snowmobiles during the winter months. And they tend to be from individuals who believe that there should not be motorized vehicle access at all. At present, there is no bylaws in force that would prevent motorized vehicles from being in that location or any other recreational park. Although, as you're aware, on your agenda for council this afternoon, there is a draft bylaw which will provide you with the authority. Excuse me, I'm just pulling up. The bylaw, if passed, would give you the authority to prohibit motorized vehicles providing access to the lookout. You can allow partial access for such purposes and at such times as you deem appropriate, or you can outright restrict access. The controls to the lookout are fairly minimal at the present time. The access from Milford Bay Road is unrestricted for the most part. The access from 118 is or had a chain across it to prevent access. However, persons unknown cut the trees that supported the chain, and it's no longer in place. And finally, there is the Ray Road access, which has some obstructions in the form of boulders that allow some access to or restrict the majority of the access. Although I understand that individuals on ATVs are circumventing the controls by accessing via private lands. The other, I think, condition that you should be aware of is that the Snowmobile Club does run the trail from Milford Bay up to the lookout and then through the property to 118, where they then cross over and go through the Fowler construction property, ultimately leading to a connection to the main snowmobile route through the township. There are obstructions in place presently that prohibit access during the non-winter months of the year. These are moved aside to allow for snowmobile access to the lookout during the winter months. There are a group of individuals who have complained on the past that the snowmobiles are doing some damage to both the rock as a result of their carbide runners, as well as damaging the flora up there. Staff's analysis of the situation would suggest that during the summer or non-winter periods of the year, some form of access control is likely in order. And to that end, staff would suggest that some form of naturalized approach is probably preferable as opposed to gates or some other kind of physical barrier. The exception to that, however, is the access via 118. In my consultations with my colleagues, I understand the fire department used that access to gain direct access to the rock in order to deal with emergencies. And for that reason, I would suggest that we put in a collapsible bollard at that location with a lock, and that the fire department have the keys for that lock so that they can gain access in the event of a need for an emergency response. Otherwise, I think we can deal with the bulk of the issues with the use of boulders for the most part, and keep it as natural as possible. There have been complaints from the adjoining property owners, private property owner, with respect to trespass. If you want to address that issue, you could put up some page wire fence. My estimates would suggest that you're looking at about 1,100 feet, or sorry, 1,100 meters of fence being required, and those would have to be anchored in rock, which would not be an inexpensive proposition. And frankly, I'm not sure that it is justified. It would also pose a potential hazard for snowmobilers if they are to continue to use that area. I think the proposed approach, Mr. Chairman, is a balance of the competing interests, and should address the bulk of the issues. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Director. Okay, so it's just shy of 11 o'clock according to the clocks that I'm looking at. Sorry? It's 10:58. So perhaps we'll just pause for a moment or two and then I'll say a few words. Perhaps you can deliberate on any commentary to Director Becking once we stop to remember. Today on November 11th, 2020, across Canada and in many other countries, people will be having virtual or physically smaller gatherings to honor the courage and devotion of brave men and women who made the supreme sacrifice of dying for their country. The hostilities of the First World War ceased on November 11, 1918 at 11 a.m., the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month. The following year marked the first observance of a day to remember and honor those who died, as well as to give thanks for the sacrifices of those who came back from serving their country. Since then, Canadians have fought in other conflicts and many have given their lives so that we might enjoy freedom today. Like many of us, I have not had to sacrifice anything for my freedom. It was given to me by those who came before me and sacrificed so much. So now it is my responsibility to never forget their service and the sacrifices of more than 1.5 million Canadian soldiers, sailors, aircrew, and merchant seamen. They died so I could have the freedom to give this speech, so I could get an education, get a job, live a free life. I am forever in their debt. Ladies and gentlemen, as we enjoy life in peace and safety, we pay our respects to all of the fallen, all of the wounded, and all who served in conflicts over the last 100 years. Today, as we should every day, we remember those who volunteered, sacrificed, served, fought, and died for our freedom. In closing, I'd like to say a few more words, at the end of which I'd like you to join me in saying we will remember them. They were young as we are young. They served, giving freely of themselves. To them we pledge, amid the winds of time, to carry their torch and never forget. We will remember them.
We'll remember them.
Okay, so given that, I'm going to call on Councillor Roberts, who has a comment.
Yes, on the access to the Huckleberry Rock for motorized vehicles. Director Becking, you did an excellent job, and you did cross all the T's and dot all the I's. I just would like you to maybe give council an update on the discussions that you had with the Snowmobile Club, further enforcement of off-track snowmobiles up on Huckleberry Rock.
Mr. Chairman, members committee, I did reach out to the Snowmobile Club. They obviously are quite keen on ensuring that the existing trail be maintained, because it does connect directly from the traffic that comes from Lake Muskoka and connects up to the main trail that goes through the township. They, in the course of their activities, they groom the trail, and that facilitates to a degree access for others through the winter months when many of our trails are not accessible. So there is a benefit that is accrue from their activities. They obviously cannot control the actions of all of their members. But they did indicate that they would be willing to work with us to try and limit off-trail activities so as to not cause damage to the lookout.
Good, thank you. Councillor Nishikawa.
Thank you. I'm really struggling with this because when we opened up that trail, there were no motorized vehicles, period. At that time, in fact, Councillor Goltz, who some of you may know from the area, he offered to take some seniors up the rock, I'll call it, with his it wasn't even, it was a small ATV, I suppose, but basically so that they could have access, not getting up the rock. I'm not sure when the Snowmobile Club started using the trail. I don't think it was a discussion with the Township of Muskoka Lakes. So I'd like a little bit more history with that. I am very opposed to having a hiking trail with motorized vehicles. And I mean, we will have some instances where you have road allowances that we're dealing with. There's no road allowance necessarily that we're talking about at this perspective. I think that, you know, I had a meeting last week with councillors from Gravenhurst who pointed out lawsuits that they are involved with, interestingly enough, which I hadn't considered, but it's much along the same line. So I would suggest to you as a hiker, it's not an easy access to hike on a snowmobile trail. Hikers create their own trails. We've seen that in Hardy Lake for years. It works very well. I just don't feel any need or requirement to have any motorized vehicles on that trail, period, other than those that need access for the tower maintenance and our fire. I Sorry, I'll let everybody else go. I'm going to
Thank
finish
you.
my Novembrance Day.
Good, thank you for that. I'm going to call on Mayor Harding and then Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, Chair Zavitz. Sort of Councillor Nishikawa's comment. That snowmobile trail has been in existence for 25 years anyway, that I've ridden through there. I agree the popularity of side-by-sides and ATVs, more and more people are definitely up there through the summertime. When plants are in hibernation, trees are at times small, trees are ridden over. I'd venture to say it's still very healthy, the land that was burned down, what, 10 years ago now. I agree that sometimes in early spring, there will be some carbide marks on the rocks that you will see. And I would suggest that we work with the Snowmobile Club to close the trail off at that particular point from an access perspective. I would also request that the Snowmobile Club groom a trail out to the lookout, because that's why you end up with off-roading, if you will, because there is no groomed trail to the lookout. It's a point of interest. It's why people will come into Muskoka Lakes when they drive from Bracebridge into Port Carling on the trail. People enjoy looking at that, and also as access off the lake. That's why the trail's there. That's the only way you're going to access that trail. I think we can find some mitigation measures, and I think in the summertime you close it to ATVs and side-by-sides with some gates per se or rocks to stop people from going up there in the summertime. I think it would be very much a disservice to our winter economy to shut this trail down in the wintertime. I've never had an issue. I've walked up there, and I walk on the snowmobile trail versus walking through 3 feet of snow. And I've snowmobiled up there in the wintertime and never again had that conflict with, there's not that many people who use that trail in the wintertime. So I'm okay to work together, but I would really hate to close that trail for snowmobiles access throughout.
Good, thank you. So Councillor Kelly and then Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chairman. 2 comments, and first let me disclose my bias. Once upon a time, I was an extremely avid snowmobiler, lapsed only because of lack of opportunity. So I enjoy that recreational activity. I think it's good for people, good for families, certainly can be a real contributor to the local economy. That having been said, the trail system that exists in place in Ontario, to the best of my knowledge, is a patchwork of almost like a lease arrangement or a borrowing arrangement, a patchwork of a bunch of individual property owners who are consulted and who agree in writing to give access to the local trail groups so that they can pass over it on their snowmobiles. The quid pro quo on the deal is that they get waivers, they get indemnification, and generally the beneficiaries of a big insurance policy, so that if anything goes bad on their property, they're not liable for it. If we're kind of confused about whether or not anybody has the right to be on that trail, they don't have the right to be on that trail. If we don't have that arrangement already in place with whoever it is, the Ontario Snowmobile Trail Operators Association, I frankly don't know who puts the deal together, but if we don't have that in place, they can't be on our property. We need, at the very least, to set the ground rules and to get the benefit of whatever insurance and indemnification is available to protect ourselves from the possibility of somebody going off the lookout on a sled and getting killed. The second thought, and Mayor Harding correctly points out, side-by-sides and other ATVs are becoming almost as important a recreational pursuit as snowmobiles once were, because they're on the decline. And I can tell you, once we formalize and open up that property to snowmobiles, I guarantee you we'll be called upon to explain why we're discriminating differently and treating ATVs differently. I don't know the answer to that, but I hope we have one. That's it.
Thank you. Councillor Roberts.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and through you. I fully support what the mayor says about they're going. The snowmobilers are going up there basically to. Many are just traveling through, but there's many that are also want to see the lookout. So I think that maybe Director Becking could approach the snowmobile club and see if they could engineer something that would allow snowmobiles to get closer to the outlook. I have a lot of evidence of photographs in the wintertime where the snowmobiles have destroyed the plant life up there in the trees. And these are not the responsible snowmobilers. These are the yahoos that are just want to run around on that precious land. The other thing I would like to ask is if I'm sure Director Becking, the township has in place, or I was told by the snowmobile club, you do have in place the agreement that they can cross over our land. So maybe I'll just turn it over, just ask Director Becking to confirm that.
Director Becking?
Mr. Chairman, I can't honestly say as I've seen the agreement, but I will be following up with the snowmobile club if that is council's direction, and ensuring that before the start of the next season that agreement is in place. It's subject to whatever terms and conditions you may wish to impose.
And I'm seeing some nodding of heads there. So I mean, sort of that's something that would appear to be a desirous piece to this. Councillor Hayes, and then the mayor again.
Just further with some information, when you ride a snowmobile trail, you have to have a snowmobile permit, and that allows the snowmobile clubs to police the area. Should we cut off the trail and not have an OFC trail going through there, we've opened it up to anybody that just wants to ride up there and go wherever they please without any kind of policing. I know that other areas have worked with their local snowmobile clubs to actually, the snowmobile clubs have put in gates to not allow ATV traffic during the summer as part of protecting their trails. So I think that working with the local snowmobile club would probably be our best bet to control the damage.
Good, Councillor Hayes. Thank you. Mayor Harding?
Thank you. And just to Councillor Kelly's comment, it's the Ontario Federation of Snowmobile Clubs, acronym is the OFSC. Those people who want to look at liability, ofsc.on.ca. Yes, you have to have a permit to access trails. That also includes liability. That also states what I can and what I can't do to control the regulation and riding. And yes, the township would be indemnified in that agreement. The OFSC and our local chapter here, Muskoka Lake Snowmobile Trails Association, MLSTA, I believe it is. They work agreements inside with the local municipality, with the District of Muskoka. I know we're working on one right now with the district in Public Works because we're changing, they're changing a trail through Port Carling. So lots of variations to this. And I appreciate, and Councillor Roberts, that yes, a tree may have been knocked over, whatever. My experiences, again, in the wintertime when they're in hibernation, they may bend over, they come back. But let me just also comment that as soon as we allow public up there, we've had forest fires that have burned the entire thing. That didn't happen in the wintertime. We have garbage and litter strewn across the place. So to single out one particular group, I'm cautious about that. And I would really hate to see snowmobiles banned from this area. I think it would be more of a negative on all of Muskoka. And we struggle to maintain some winter economy. We also know that this year in particular under COVID, you can't buy a snowmobile up here, the same as Cedars in the summertime, because people want to be up and doing things. And sitting in your own helmet bubble is a great opportunity to be COVID safe. So I hope we can find some compromise on all this.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll let Councillor Mazan comment and then we'll wrap this up.
Thank you, and through you, I certainly support allowing our Director of Public Works to work with the different stakeholder groups. So in this particular case, the Snowmobile Club, I'm a huge fan of working with people and trying to find good outcomes. So it sounds like some great ideas coming forward. The one thing it has been brought to my attention, and whether we like it or not, is there's new technology. So in the same way, some of the discussion around boats and the different boats that are now available and the power, it is happening also with the snowmobiles. And I just would like it be brought to their attention, those new treads, and forgive me for not using the right language, but I think I heard carbides, but the spikes, they actually are creating damage on the rocks. So just as you are having those discussions, what's not important to one person is really important to somebody else. And I think in the spirit of making sure we're looking to preserve and protect, if you look at the rock crop and you look at the entrance, it celebrates that we are standing on billion-year-old rocks. And it's the statement as you go into there. So it is very noticeable. And I think it just needs to be part of the discussion that you are having with the Snowmobile Club.
Good. Thank you. Thank you. Quick last comment, Councillor Edwards.
Yes, thank you. The trail itself that goes up and across, I don't have a problem with, and maybe they could have a bit of parking. I don't think they have to run out to the lookout point. They can get off the machine, take a rest and walk out, the same as the other hikers would. I think that would be a compromise. I don't want to see them stop snowmobile, let's close the trail as such, but they shouldn't be running around up top there and that. And I think the Snowmobile Club could police that with a strong warning, and if they don't, then close it. But I think, like I say, it's good for the actual economy to have the snowmobiles around, but I think they should be restricted to just the trail, and that's all. Thank you.
Good, thank you, thank you. So I do have a resolution here, and I think it speaks to the proviso. I see Director Becking shaking his head quite a bit in agreement and acknowledgement. So there's certainly a piece to this where there needs to be continued dialogue, ongoing dialogue with the snowmobile group or groups, and managing this thing as we move forward. This will be coming to council next month, given the approval today. So I'll read this motion, this resolution dated today, November 11th, 2020, moved by Councillor Bridgman, seconded by Councillor Edwards. Be it resolved that the General Finance Committee recommended Township Council that the installation of access controls and signage, as outlined in the staff report entitled Access Controls, Huckleberry Rock Trail Property, and dated November 11, 2020, be authorized. All those in favor? Okay, that's carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, committee. Okay. Item 6A, we're going to hear from Mark Donaldson, our Director of Financial Services, regarding his Q3 financial update, which is ending September 30th. Mark?
Great.
Welcome.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. Today, staff are presenting the Q3 update on the Township's finances. The report is based on all information available at the time of preparation of the report. The actuals are based on actual balances in our systems up to September 30, and the forecast to the year end includes all known material variances, which will impact the results or expected to have an impact on the results at December 31st. At this time, staff are forecasting a very small surplus for 2020, resulting from lower revenues offset by lower expenses. The table on page 2 of the report is a high-level summary with a more detailed breakdown by division provided on page 4 for revenues and page 6 for expenses. To December 31st, staff are forecasting that we will achieve 96% of the forecasted revenues as compared to the budget. The shortfalls on the revenue side are expected due in part to Council's resolution earlier in the year to waive late penalties as related to COVID, as well as lower supplemental tax revenues due to delays in inspections by MPAC, and that also is related to COVID as well. We are expecting lower revenues as well with the closure of some of the Township's facilities and the arenas and the community centers. And as well, there were some lower forecasts on maintenance of district roads, and both of these items are mostly offset by lower expenses. At the same time, staff are also forecasting that we will achieve about 96% of expenses as compared to budget at year end. A number of temporary staff vacancies during periods of recruitment during the year contributed to some of those savings, as well as lower expenses, as I just mentioned, with the closed facilities and lower maintenance on the district roads as well. On page 7, there's a summary table that outlines our capital budget and the forecast to the year end. For capital, the forecast is approximately 82% of the budget that was approved earlier this year. Some of these savings on the capital side relate to lower costs of acquisition of projects or vehicles or assets than were anticipated. So there were savings on those. And in a few cases, some projects are being deferred by decision in terms of to future years. So the Portage Street dock, I think, was an item that was discussed in previous months that was part of the budget. On page 9, there's a general table that just outlines the activity of our reserves in terms of inflows and outflows to September 30th, excuse me. And those amounts will continue to be tracked to year end as well. So overall, at Q3, the township's finances appear to be on track with its original budget. There are some savings on revenues, but they're offset by savings in expenses as well. And we look like we're in good shape for the current fiscal year. And with that, if there's any questions, I'm happy to address them.
Good, thank you. I see no hands. No hands, no comments. There's one, Councillor Jagowitz.
Thank you, Chair. I wasn't going to actually say anything because the report speaks for itself. But what I will say is excellent report. I fully support it, and I think it's a job well done. And I look forward to the same quality when we go through our budget process.
Good, thank you. Absolutely. Echo those comments, certainly. So I see no other comments. I'm going to thank you, Mark, for that presentation and certainly for that performance. Excellent. I'm going to call on, this is item 6B, 2020 Capital Program Status Overview. I'm going to ask our CAO to speak first, set the table, and then he'll ask his staff to report. So, Derek. Yeah.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Quite often, council makes fairly substantial investments in infrastructure at the beginning.
Glenn needs to turn off his microphone.
Annual budget process. And
Glenn needs to.
In the past, it's occurred to staff that in the past, council really hasn't seen what your bang for the buck really was. So today's presentation is essentially that, to give you an overview of what we accomplished from a capital infrastructure perspective this year. And each department head will take you through their particular area. So I'll hand it over to staff now. Thank you. Go ahead. So the first item obviously is our strategic plan. And as we've previously indicated to you, the plan is to come back once the consultation process is concluded, which I believe it did earlier this week. And so we'll have another session, hopefully towards the end of November, to understand the results of the consultation process and how that influenced any changes to the proposed document. Provided committee is comfortable with that, then it can come back to council in December for ratification. I guess I'll pick it up from here. At this point, I'll hand it over to Ryan. Okay. Thank you, Mr. CAO. Through your chair, the fire equipment that you see on here, the first item should actually indicate deployed. I guess this is a lack of proofreading on my part. Most of the items that you see on here are either on order or have been deployed for this year. Everything is progressing as normal. I I guess I could stand for a question, or if you prefer, Mr. CAO, would you prefer questions at the end?
I apologize. Sir, I think it would probably be best to hold questions till the end, just so you can get through your presentation, right?
Okay.
Thank you.
The first item that you'll see on there, rescue sod, like we went through, I guess we'll just advance that. We'll wait for the questions at the end. Fire fleet. So in the fire fleet, you'll see there is a new Car 1, which is an F-150. It is deployed, and it's actually on the road today. Command 6 is in Port Carling. This is a command vehicle that has a whole bunch of enhancements so that we can monitor our firefighters as they're deployed at a scene. This is deployed, it's in stock. And Pumper 7, which is due to arrive in June of next year, is for the Windermere Fire Station. It is on order.
Okay, so with respect to IT, the projects listed are the large projects that we were anticipating completing this year. So computers have been purchased and deployed. We had to acquire a number of laptops this year because of COVID, and so that was a big undertaking and project which we finished up a few weeks ago. I'm continuing with upgrading cell phones for staff when they are not working and functioning properly. The budget software, we're about to start using it and get training soon. I know that HR has been working on the intranet platform when it's almost ready to be deployed. These a number of miscellaneous hardware items such as screens and smart boards, etc. We have deferred that this year because of the we're not needing them right now because of the COVID. So we, instead of buying something and then technology changing, etc., we are holding off on those projects. The M files, the records manager continues to work on that project, and hopefully it'll be finished by the end of the year or shortly into the new year. And the asset management system program, Public Works is working on that, and I see that it is approximately 50% complete, so I can answer any questions. Don't see any.
I can't see, so I don't know if there's.
There is none.
Mr. Chairman and members committee, with respect to our parks operations, we have been successful in completing the majority of the objectives for the year, with a couple of exceptions. You'll recall that there was a decision taken by council to defer the Portage Dock, and other than that, we have a couple of other items which are currently in the tendering stage. That may seem as a tad odd given the time of year. However, the contracting community have indicated that there is a benefit to doing it during the winter months. So because it gives them a working platform because of the ice. So all in all, Parks is on track to complete what it set out to do. Community centers, again, for the most part, we have completed those objectives that we set out to achieve. The largest single exception to that would be the internet for Raymond area. Given the recent announcements from both the provincial and federal governments with respect to special funding for expansion of internet to rural areas, we have put a pause on that until we have a good understanding of what is what will be the rules of the game, as it were, and how we might best access those funds. Next slide, please. Again, our state of completion with respect to our administrative and operational facilities is quite good. The projects have either been completed or have been initiated and are anticipated to be completed before year end. Next slide. All of the objectives for the Ballard Arena were completed as of the date of the report. Next. With respect to Port Carling, the majority of the objectives have been completed. You will recall that council elected to defer the design of the replacement of the concrete slab pending a further report from staff. And also the drawings of the plant room are in the latter stages of completion and will be complete before year end. Next slide. Bridges and structures. We are getting very close on the Beaumaris Bridge. We expect that the barriers and traffic control measures will be removed this week, and we're hopeful that paving can occur either late this week or early next. The two EAs, one for the Burgess Dam and the other for the Bala Falls Bridge, are in public consultation at the present time, and I expect that those two projects will carry over into the new year. Finally, the guide rail at the Medora Lake Road Bridge has been completed and is in place. Next slide, please. As far as our equipment is concerned, the two major purchases of the year, the sweeper and the grader, were both completed, and both vehicles were successfully deployed earlier in the year. The spreader controls, were awaiting some parts before those can be implemented. The AVL system has been recently set up. We're still in configuration stage, but I expect that that will be complete before year end. And finally, the pickup truck, it has been ordered, but because of production schedules and whatnot, it hasn't been delivered. We will receive it before year end, I'm told, but let's just say that we're approaching that with some skepticism. Next. As far as the roads program is concerned, most, if not all, of the objectives were achieved for the year. Two notable exceptions: the Curry Street widening. You'll recall that matter was deferred, and the street lighting at Sandor and Hewlett. Both are in process at the present time, and I'm quietly confident that we can get those completed before year end. Next, please.
Thank you. Great reports. Of course, lots going on. COVID's not keeping anyone down. In this staff, in this township, in this corporation, I really appreciate that. I know you can see as one moves around the township, you can see the results of those efforts that have just been outlined by Director Becking as well. Certainly, all of staff, thank you. I see a couple of hands here. Councillor Hayes, and then the mayor.
Okay, thank you through you to probably Cheryl. We had discussed at one point upgrading the audiovisual and internet at the community center to accommodate in-person meetings, given the current state of COVID, that's impossible, but are we still considering this at a future date so that we can have in-person meetings?
Go ahead.
Yes, we are actually in the process of having that equipment installed. We had to link the township and the community center buildings together. So we had to put a trench through the parking lot and to connect the two facilities, which Ken looked after that. And now our IT service providers are in the process of setting the community center up for future use.
That's excellent news. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Harding.
Thank you. And through you, I guess just to Director Donaldson in particular, thank you. Councillor Jagowitz made a comment earlier, but never before have I seen such a simplified approach to everything we're doing to be able to present to everybody. So thank you. And it's nice to see our financial affairs are in great hands.
Good, thank you. Good comment. Anyone else? No one else. Okay, good. Listen, as given that, we're going to move on to item 6C, which is calling on Terry Guthrie to talk to us about a proposed license agreement, Black Roll 4-3-045. Terry?
Thank you, Chair. So before you is a report about an application for the request of a license agreement for a frame bunkie and a pump house. The request was circulated to senior staff. They have no objection to the license agreement for the bunkie. However, they will be requesting removal of the pump house and all connecting pipelines and have it relocated within the property owner's property lines. There will be liability insurance as per our policy required, naming the township as insured. To start, there will be a $600 a year fee for the first 5 years, and it will be set out following in the following terms based on the policy, the existing policy. So it's pretty straightforward. If you have any questions, I can answer them for you.
Good, thank you, Terry. Committee? Good, okay. There are no questions. I'm going to read this resolution moved by Councillor Jagowitz, seconded by Councillor Kelly. Be it resolved that the General Finance Committee recommend to Township Council that the application for a license agreement for the encroachment of a dwelling situated on a road allowance lying between lots 29 and 30, Plan M128 Medora, submitted by Gerald and Irene Black, Roll 4-3-045 be approved in accordance with Township Council Policy C-LS-07, provided that the encroachment of a pump house and any associated water lines be removed, and that a bylaw be given 3 readings and passed at a future council meeting to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute any documents required for the license agreement. All those in favor? Good, thank you. That's council. Let's carry unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. I'm going to call, item 6D, I'm going to call on Cheryl Hollows, our corporate administrator, to present the 2019 annual accessibility status report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Zavitz. This report that you have in front of you serves to notify council, staff, and the public of how we're moving along with the 2019 to 2023 multi-year accessibility plan and the things that we are doing to make our community more accessible to the public and enable a greater use. This keeps us in compliance with the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act 2005 and the Integrated Accessibility Standards Regulation as well. Also serves to report to you that we are going to be undergoing an audit from the Ministry for Seniors and Accessibility. We are confident that we are in total compliance and look forward to working with our colleagues at the ministry to learn more about accessibility and to move forward with any recommendations that they may have going forward. So I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Good, thank you, Cheryl. Okay, so if there are no questions, I see no questions. We'll move on. We're taking that information in. Thank you for that report. Oh, I'm sorry. Councilor Nishikawa has a comment. Ruth?
Thank you. And of course, some of you have heard me speak about this before, being on the accessibility committee with the district, and my concern with Muskoka Lakes. When our population numbers change, and I believe that there's a movement that is going to acknowledge or put more weight. Did I use the right word, Mayor? Sorry. Put more weight on our seasonal population. I think our requirements are going to change a fair amount as far as accessibility goes. And I'm really concerned, and as I mentioned before, more from a public works perspective as far as our sidewalks, our parking. For instance, Port Carling is a perfect example of we force people out onto the middle of the highway with their wheelchairs and other accessibility units that people are using. And I've had a strong concern about that for years because they're on the highway and also so are those dump trucks at the same time. And so I hope that we can have a further discussion about moving forward beyond our municipal buildings and actually ensuring that accessibility is across our township, not just the municipal buildings.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Do we have any other thoughts or comments on this at this point? Committee, seeing none. I'm going to read this resolution moved by Councilor Mazan, seconded by Councilor Nishikawa. Be it resolved that the General Finance Committee recommend the Township Council that the 2019 Annual Accessibility Status Report as presented on November 11th, 2020 be received. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you.
All right.
Okay, well, thank you, Cheryl Hollows. Excellent. Okay, item 7A is our fire chief, Ryan Morrell, going to give us a fire master plan update. Ryan, you have the floor.
Through you, Chair, I provided the bulk of the report at the beginning of the meeting.
Good. Okay, thank you. And any committee comments, thoughts on that? If not, okay, if not, we'll move on. We'll take that under advisement. We're going to move on to your second report, Fire Chief Ryan, on the Calgary Foundation donation to the Minette Firefighters Association. Your report, please.
Thank you, Chair. So this report provides an overview of a proposed donation by the Calgary Foundation to the Minette Firefighters Association. The foundation is proposing to offer to the Minette Firefighters Association a donation of $4,000, which will be held by this township. I think the report speaks for itself. I stand for questions.
Excellent, thank you. Committee. Oh, good. Well, thank you very much. Great. That's excellent, of course. And I'm going to move on now. The minutes of the September 15th Public Library Board meeting, I'm just going to accept those into the public record and thank our CEO of the library, Kathy Crowder, for that. Item 8A, minutes of the Economic Development and Grants Committee meeting dated September 30th. I'm going to accept those as well into the record. Chair Kelly, I think we'll be seeing the results of that in a few minutes as we move on into under 8B. So we'll just do that. We're going to move to a report from Corey Moore, our Communications and Economic Development Specialist regarding Township Winter Initiatives. Corey, you've got the floor.
Thank you, Your Chair. As committee is aware, we've been working on Township Winter Initiatives over the past couple of months with the Grants and Economic Development Committee. And most recently, Council has endorsed some of those activities by keeping some of the township recreational facilities or assets open during this winter season. Overall, the focus of our Grants and Economic Development Committee, as highlighted in our strategy, is focusing on those local conditions that assist in helping the community thrive. And it's no different with these winter initiatives. Most recently, we've heard concerns expressed about the availability of public washrooms at these facilities. Typically in the year, the township does provide public washrooms at multiple locations across the township, from Victoria Day to the Cranberry Festival. Due to the nature of these facilities and cold temperatures during the winter season, they remain closed during the off season. Additionally, due to the pandemic this year, other facilities that are normally available to the public in the winter, such as arenas, libraries, and community centers, remain no longer available to the traveling public this year. Working with Director Becking, staff have proposed 3 options and are looking for committee's direction on how to proceed. The first option would be to not provide washrooms and maintain the current level of service. If that was the direction of committee, it would be prudent that we advise the public to plan ahead before visiting these venues. The second option would be to retrofit existing public washrooms, although that option would require significant upgrades. The third option would be to provide some temporary washrooms for the short term for this year. Regarding this option, staff highlighted 4 main locations that would be a possibility. Those are Hardy Lake Trail, the Bala Sports Park, Hannah Park, and Huckleberry Rock. It should be noted that the most significant operational issue with this will be the COVID-19 cleaning protocols, as the township doesn't have the staff resources that are normally available during the summer season. With that, the report does highlight the cost, approximate cost that would be included with such an initiative, and should council direct staff to provide the winter washrooms, the requisite funds could be funded through the provincial COVID-19 restart funding. With that, your chair, myself, and Director Becking are available for questions.
Good, thank you. Okay, so I'm expecting some chat on this one. Councilor Nishikawa.
Thank you. First of all, Corey, if you could please confirm what you just said about financing the porta potties because of COVID.
Correct. And through working with the Director of Finance, Mr. Mark Donaldson, he was able to confirm that we would be able to fund the washrooms through the provincial COVID-19 Safe Restart funding we received.
Thank you, because otherwise I was not going to be in favor based on the numbers that were presented at the report. And I will say the reason would be that we would be changing the service levels in our township and recognizing that there may be a need of changing the service levels, but I would rather wait to see what the demand that people are actually, everyone knows I'm hiking every day. I plan my body breaks based on my outings. And I would suggest that most reasonable people do. And I don't want to try to create things that we don't need. So for instance, it's been interesting because I've watched the traffic flow in Bala, and certainly always different when the weather is 20 degrees and things, but not so busy. And then knowing that some of the businesses may be closing after the Christmas season, I'm still very curious about who is going to be out and about. Having said that, though, if COVID's going to pay for it, I would have to agree.
Good, thank you. Good comments. Councillor Bridgman.
Thank you, Chair Zavitz. Just a question to you, Corey. I see the other alternative is to bring in temporary washrooms from an outside agency. Why is that part of this report? Like, what are the benefits? What are the costs? I'm just unclear why that's part of this report, actually.
I may actually defer this to Director Becking, who may have better insight on that.
Mr. Chairman, essentially, we've got one of two options. We can either upgrade our existing public washrooms, put in heat in order to prevent freezing of the pipes, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, or we provide porta potties. That's the range of alternatives. So when we refer to temporary facilities, what we're saying is porta potties. The two terms are interchangeable.
Thank you. I didn't realize that option 3 was also part of the paragraph below it. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Councillor Hayes.
Through you to Mr. Becking, when you talk about winterizing our current washrooms, could you give us an idea what the cost would be on that? And if the COVID money would cover that? Because that would be an investment into the future that we could make. I'm just wondering what the difference in the cost is and would it be covered?
Mr. Chairman, I can't answer the councillor's question because we didn't cost it out. Okay. But it would involve running power to the additional power capacity to the washrooms in order to put in space heaters and the like. As to its eligibility for funding, I'd have to defer to Mr. Donaldson on that matter. But from a more practical perspective, it's highly unlikely that we would be able to organize and implement such an installation in time for the coming winter season. Frankly, it's not a terribly practical solution to the problem at this point in time.
Thank you for that. I wonder, the mayor, Phil, go ahead. He's on the move. Oh, you're muted, Phil.
There we go. Sorry. As you know, I had to change locations quickly. I guess my perspective is I appreciate that we can get COVID funding for that this year. But we're going to set a new service level expectation going forward. And I'm just not sure we need to do that. Do we need to have porta potties at the end of every trailhead? As Councillor Shikawa says, you plan your walks accordingly. We're outside in nature. Yes, there will be some more people up here this winter, but so I want to say so be it. I'm worried about setting a future expectation level. It's one thing to add some services, but when we have to go and take them away because it's not funded anymore, I think we're going to be in trouble.
I agree. Councillor Mazan.
Thank you, and through you. Seeking some clarification, Corey, at the beginning of your presentation, did you mention that historically people would have access to community centers and arenas?
When those facilities were open, it would normally be a possible option, such as the arenas, but it's not to say they're not available all the time, 24/7, normally. Right. So, you know, I hear the comments and it is a tricky one. This was brought to our attention actually coming off the heels of the Cranberry Festival. This is when this really started to take some momentum and coincided with the report that we received at Economic Development through the Explorer's Edge. I forget what that presentation was, but just talking about the importance of having facilities. And so anecdotally, I've had quite a few people mentioning to me that if you drive throughout the township, you don't actually have access. There isn't anywhere to go today. So I'm kind of mixed mind. I think it's important that we provide a service, and maybe I can be so crass as to say that a certain portion of the population doesn't have the same flexibility. If you're halfway through the township, you know, there's, you know, if I don't know how to say this, it's an uncomfortable one. I'm struggling here. So I think we have to be considering this. It has been brought to my attention that it is uncomfortable if you're driving from Bracebridge and through the township.
If there isn't a place that's well-known and accessible to go to, then that is a very real thing I think we need to understand. You know, and coming into this prior to the report, at the low cost of just the porta potty, I had my head around that, thinking that that was just an easy solution, and it would be a continuation at some of these sites of a service that we are providing already. And I think if you look to last weekend, both at Hardy Lake and Huckleberry, there is still a lot of activity at those sites. So it's the cost of the cleaning, and maybe it's something we just need to further understand. So that's, I guess, my first comments. The second comments, I'd be interested in knowing if the other municipalities around us are addressing this as well. Is this simply something we're thinking about? Or I think our geography is unique just because we are so spread out. I don't think I handled that very well. I feel like I need to bring forward the voice that's quietly not heard, which is if it's a real issue for a lot of people. And I don't think we can minimize that just because of the cost.
Thank you, Councillor. I might just share, as you say, you go from Bracebridge through our township to, I suppose, Gravenhurst. If you stay on 169 and 118, there are two places, and they're both essentially gas stations that I would imagine are more welcoming than any restaurant that you might find, you know, in the Bala area. And to your point, doing the math, and this is maybe perhaps to prompt more discussion, this is $40-some thousand that I did the math on. If I look at 5 months, let's just call it December, January, February, March, and April. Considerable money. And I just wonder about the deployment of those funds in that regard. And I was a big fan of it. So I'm listening, and I'm learning here. So first of all, I'm going to ask Councillor Edwards, then Nishikawa, then Hayes, and then Kelly.
Thank you. The question that Councillor Mazan had asked is, Bracebridge have put temporary washrooms in the park and down at the bottom of the hill, and they've been there all summer, and they'll probably be there all winter, because a lot of restaurants and everything else like that people would go into are closed. And that I think in the future we should be looking at is what the province of Ontario maybe has, where you have a holding tank in some of our parks with the washrooms there, and then it's pumped regularly, which is a little bit better than a Johnny on the spot. And I think we should be looking at it. And a lot of people maybe plan ahead, but they still have to go. So it's just a case of, and that nobody can plan forever. Sorry. But I think that's in the future. If council would like to go ahead with this, yes, it's expensive. If it's covered by the COVID, I think maybe we should try it. But I would support council on that. Thank you.
Good. Thank you very much. I'm going to let Councillor Nishikawa in first. Ruth?
Thank you. Sorry, it takes me a little extra second to take my unmute off. So I just wanted to, I'm going to go back to my original comments. And, you know, I said that, sure, if somebody else is paying, I'd pay for it. But I would be concerned that we're changing service levels. Also, we have had a porta potty at Hardy Lake Park forever. Mm-hmm. All through the winter, and I'm not quite sure how we are dealing with it differently today, and what the service levels, like my understanding was, or at least I've watched the people that we leased the unit from do the cleaning. I wasn't aware fully that we were sending our staff in, and how often that was. I don't have a really clear report, but I would hope that we would maintain our current service level. I'm going to go back to, don't want to establish something that we can't pay for in the future. While great if we can get access to that money, maybe we should rethink how we use that money. But again, my bigger concerns, I would rather see the response, so it's very interesting, Susan, your comments about Hardy Lake Park. My husband and I were thrilled last Monday, not this past Monday, the one before, when the weather was really not so favorable, that we could walk in the park again, because we haven't been able to all summer. And there wasn't people here. It was very interesting. As soon as the weather warmed up, we had throws again lined up on the highway. So I'm going to suggest that some people may not like our weather up here, and we may not see the volume of people that we are expecting or we're imagining that might be coming. So I would rather wait and see, and then if there is a need, we can bring it. And we have enough special council meetings, so I'm sure we could throw it on one of those. But I'm going to suggest that I may not be supporting this at this time. But I would hope that we were going to maintain our current service level, which in fact, Hardy Lake Park has been engaged in.
Okay, and just to follow up on that before I ask all the other councillors or committee members to chime in, I would ask Director Becking, so Hardy Lake and Torrance Barrens, are those washrooms that we're responsible for as a township, or are those provincial?
No, they're township.
Johnny on the spot.
My understanding, Mr. Chairman, is that the township provided both of those situations. As to, I wasn't aware that the one at Hardy Lake was provided for during the winter season. But be that as it may, I know with respect to Torrance Barrens, however, that porta potty was put in expressly at my direction for the summer months only, and it has, I believe, since been removed, which was also at my direction.
Okay, thank you. That's informative. Councillor Bridgman, Hayes, Kelly, and then Mazan. Now we're done.
Thank you, Chair Zavitz. I am confused too again, but it seems to me that for Hardy Park and Torrance and Huckleberry, can we not pick sort of those three because they are the most used? And I also think if we're getting funding for this, I do not believe we're setting up a long-term service level that cannot be reversed when we go back to whatever normal is when we get back there. So that's just my comment.
Thank you. Councillor Hayes.
Thank you, and through you. I would like to see a porta potty in Bala near the arena, because that would be where people would go, and near the community center in Port Carling. And I wouldn't put any new ones out at any of the sites. The reason being, are we saying to the people that have been using these facilities for the past 30 years, you know, you didn't count, but these new people that are coming in, we're going to put out porta potties for them. But because there is not an availability to use a public washroom in the downtowns, I would put them out there. Although in Port Carling, you don't have any reason to go because there's no shops open, but in Bala there is, and it would be appreciated.
Okay, so I see the hand up. Councillor Kelly had said you first, and then Councillor Mazan.
Thank you, and through you, just a couple of thoughts. I was a big fan of this concept originally, but I naively, I guess, believed that it was a matter of just leaving the lights on in an existing facility and upgrading the cleaning regimen. As I think Mayor Harding and others have suggested, I'm concerned about setting service level expectations that we can't follow through on. I am not a big fan of spending money just because it's not ours. It all comes from the same source. And if there's no legitimate, justifiable reason, I don't want to spend the cash. I also think, and maybe we've looked at this and exhausted all possibilities, for the kind of money we're talking about for these porta potties, could we not find a way to upgrade the cleaning regimen at existing facilities? You know, the community center in Port Carling, the arena in Bala, and have people have some sort of access if you have to use the facility, it'll be warmer, it would be cleaner, and it probably wouldn't be any more expensive. Doesn't solve a problem on a remote spot like Hardy Lake or like the Huckleberry, but I've lost my enthusiasm for this. It's expensive. I frankly don't think it'll be used very much. It'll end up being $1,000 a trip, and that's an awfully expensive facility to make available to people. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Mazan, and then we'll wrap this up.
Thank you, and through you. I think one of the things I'm hearing is something we're all struggling with, is there's a lot of unknown. And if there's nothing that the last 7 months haven't shown us, we don't know, right? And we are in uncharted territories. What I have heard though, if we think about what the goal is, and that is if somebody is driving around our township at this point in time, there isn't a place for them to safely go. So does it need to be at Hardy Lake? Maybe not. And maybe Councillor Hayes is actually right, that the focus should be on our 2 urban centers and have them in 2 strategic locations that maybe it makes it a bit easier for us to clean too, and those costs come down. But that there is maybe something, and maybe that is something that staff could explore and come back to, because I think if we come back to really what's the real thing here, and that is making sure that somehow there is access and that it is well signed and well known to the traveling public. As a note, I have had somebody, and I think this is a voice that is often also underheard, is we do actually have people who are in the emergency services field who, and anecdotally, I will say again, they come out on a call, and if there isn't a place to go, then they are heading back into one of the major urban centers. And I think these are the voices that we really need to be listening to as we make these types of decisions. It's very easy to dismiss. So I don't know where to go with that, other than I think if I could end off on anything, this is uncharted territories. There is no doubt. Embedded in our economic development strategy is a focus on trying to encourage a year-round economy. So the discussion around, is this a new service? Well, maybe as an agreement down the road, this would be a new service. Maybe it is something, a long-term play. We do actually have to think about having something as basic as year-round facilities. I'm not saying that that's today's discussion, but it certainly sets the stage for that. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Councilor Nishikawa, and then I'll wrap this up.
Thank you. It's the so again, sort of to reiterate about Hardy Lake Park, and Susan, you raised it and I didn't, but that unit that is right off of 169 gets a lot of people use that. So I've seen many contractors pull in to use that facility. I've seen the OPP pull in to use that facility. So believe it or not, that location is actually more accessible, or people have gotten used to it because they're not pulling in off of side streets. They're just pulling in off of the highway. And I would, again, we established a service level there, and I would hope that we would maintain that. Now, I don't understand. We actually really haven't been a voice when it comes to Hardy Lake Park. And COVID this year, because I can tell you there was no social distancing going on at all. There was so much not going on, but again, it's the province, right? So, and I know just a bit of a history. The porta potties used to get left there because the company that we used at the time actually donated a lot to the municipality as well. So there was that, but that established that service level. And sort of one other thing, I would not be in favor of putting porta potties at the Torrance Barrens. Torrance Barrens, in my mind currently, because we don't have an understanding with the province, I don't believe that our municipality should be extending any other service until we get that understanding with the province. I think that this is going to be a longer ongoing issue. And I would suggest also that location is pretty far away from impacts that, I bet you there would be less than a handful of people that we would be impacting at that location. So not to not for the Torrance Barrens.
Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you. And maybe to wrap this and to summarize, obviously an interesting issue and one that I don't think we're going to solve today, it would appear. And in fact, I have a resolution here, which I'm reluctant to read. I almost am wondering if we shouldn't do what we did previous today and provide Director Becking with a little more information. I think what he's heard today is that we would want to perpetuate the washroom at Hardy Lake. We wouldn't want to carry on with the availability of one at Torrance Barrens, and we would want to entertain the notion of in our two major identified nodes, our major centers, availability to a washroom there, and it could be in our own facility. Is that too much to ask, and then to go right to a staff report to council next month? I wouldn't want to leave this back here for December and then we get into January, and I'd rather sort of put a fine point on this. It is COVID, so it is unique. We are dealing with a very unique scenario. And I'm wondering if I could maybe see a show of hands or heads on that as a way forward. Is that something that we could? Okay, I'm seeing good, excellent. Okay, thank you. So Director Becking, if that would, you'd be so kind, I believe that is relatively clear. If you need more clarification, I mean, we could ask the committee to send you in a note by Monday if that were so inclined, but I think we've already done that. And
I think I get the message, Mr. Chairman.
Good. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. So then we'll move on from that. I will not read this resolution. And thank you for that. Thanks for bringing that forward. Okay, so we're to that point now, unfinished business. I have no reference here to any unfinished business. Does anyone have anything they would bring up, or would we go right to item 10A, which is new business, District of Municipality of Muskoka updates? Okay, go ahead. So I guess I'd call on the mayor, Phil Harding, if you would, to give us that District of Muskoka update, please.
Thank you very much. Couple things, engineering, public works. We're having to evaluate how we close landfills. Ministry's given us a moving target. We have a landfill we're trying to close, and the old method that they suggested we close it by is not working. So they've had to, we're doing a new method because there's some leachate going into a nearby tributary that we need to correct. So working on that. There's a budget amendment coming through, and nothing else major happening there. The one item of interest for council is that of our municipal modernization. And we've had a couple of meetings already. We have been able to solidify that seasonal residents are seasonal residents. And just for those people who are watching or listening, there's been some misinformation a little bit that seasonal residents think, well, what do you mean my vote's only half a vote? I only get half a vote. Seasonal, we all get a vote. And every time you vote for your municipal election, you get a vote. The distribution of the 22 seats around the district table utilized a methodology 50 years ago to get to the 22 councillors represented by 4 Muskoka Lakes, 4 Huntsville, so on and so forth, 3 for Lake of Bays, 3 for Georgian Bay. When you factor a new methodology, again, if you put 100% weighting on the seasonal residents, you still get to that same number. So what's going on right now is district council and the municipal district council last term agreed that 22 councillors is too many councillors to sit around the table. The modernization committee's had a number of different reports. We now have new numbers. They've been able to utilize a combination of the second home study and an environics data that pings your cell phone. And they've got some better accuracy as to how many seasonal residents are here. Between permanent and seasonal residents, Muskoka Lakes is still number 1. We have more residents, seasonal and permanent combined, than any other municipality. At the end of the day, the towns and the townships still, in round numbers, only have 45% of total residents. that's being the townships versus the towns. The urban centers, the towns, still outweigh with about 55% of residents. So it's going to come down to how we determine how we count seats around the table. The recommendation right now, last week was our modernization committee, was a recommendation to district council to go to 12 councillors, 2 councillors per municipality. So we would send from Muskoka Lakes, and this will come into effect potentially next election cycle. But we would be sending, the mayor would be going, and then we would elect 1 district councillor at large. We're going to have some other considerations to consider how we want to manage it at the Township of Muskoka Lakes. Suggestion right now is obviously that 10 people might be too many. How many do we want to go down to? Is it 2 ward councillors per? Is it 1 ward councillor per plus a district councillor at large? So we're going to have some more of that discussion. We need our clerk to give us some information on that. But this process is moving quickly. There's another modernization committee meeting tomorrow at 4 o'clock to discuss the terms of what I'll call weighted voting. And that basically solidifies and supports the concept of representation by population, meaning if you have people, then you are represented around that district table. So that's fundamentally what's going forward in that. Lots of discussion. I know my fellow district councillors and myself have had some initial thoughts on this. We can try and fight this, I think, at the district, but this train is moving. And if we can't decide across the District of Muskoka, then in all fairness, I think we're going to have the province mandate and tell us what's going to happen. And we know the Ford government is certainly interested in fewer councillors around a table. So I'm assuming that's what the Ford government would mandate to us, and we'll be told without having input. So that's sort of the high level of what's going on that way. There's a couple of other things. I don't have my notes with me right now, but open to any questions.
I think that's plenty. Okay, listen, so first of all, I see Councillor Hayes and Councillor Kelly. Councillor Kelly had his hand up first. Please proceed.
Thank you, and through you. I know this is being delivered in the form of an update from the district, but I'm also certain that everyone, including you, your worship, realize this is a humongous issue. And it's an issue that's going to take considerable evaluation and understanding to the extent that the township has any involvement or ratification or approval. I was aghast at the decision that the Ontario government made early in this term to arbitrarily have the size of the city council in Toronto, not because they made the decision, but because they made the decision without any form of public input. So my first concern here is, you say things are rolling along. Things are rolling along. We had a study that was commissioned, I think, in 2017, and it seems like all the activity on it got done in the last 8 days. So things really have heated up, and I for the life of me can't understand why it's so. Now, maybe I missed all the public notices. Maybe I missed the opportunity to delegate and make my opinion heard, but it will be heard. And it will be heard only after an appropriate level of information is delivered and time is given to make what I think are appropriate considerations. This is a humongous change. Everything from identifying composition, size, eligibility to perform at different levels. The possibility that, for instance, someone who's charged with the duty of fulfilling the role of a councillor at the township is automatically in a conflict and can't act in the same capacity at the district. I don't understand that. I don't understand how that works. So when we start talking about stuff like this and it gets delivered in the form of the only thing standing between right, and me having lunch before the council meeting is this, this little issue. It doesn't sit well, and it deserves considerably more attention than we're able to give it right now. And I don't want anybody to mistake the fact that I'm going to shut up and stand down on it for now as any kind of acquiescence or understanding. I don't understand how we got here. I don't understand how it hasn't been the subject of a lot of consideration and deliberation and input from the public. And I don't, frankly, yet understand. I'm getting to understand what role we as a council play on behalf of those who elected us to represent their interests at the township. What role we play in understanding all of this and ultimately, I guess, blessing it, approving it. So that's my update from the district.
I am going to let the mayor respond. He has his hand up, and then I'm going to be calling on the other three folks who have their blue hands up.
Right. So thank you, and Councillor Kelly, thank you. The reality is this has been discussed at the district table. This is now the second term. So I'm going to say for 4 years now, it has been a mandate of the province to regularly update the appropriate number of people who sit around the district table. So it started last term. We talked around in circles and it didn't happen. There was some movement forward, some benign kind of generic conversations. One of them being that of the seasonal representation and seasonal residents equal 1 vote when we're going to start counting people for representation. So we can debate and argue the numbers, and trust me, this conversation has been going on around the district table for some years. No, it has not been at our council table, but the same way as what happens at the province or the federal government, we may or may not always be involved in. We will be impacted by this. And again, all I can say is the province has said very clearly, you must advise and regularly update. If you don't do it, if we as a municipality, the District of Muskoka, do not make recommendations, then the province can impose at their will a recommendation. So we can fight and kick and scream and say no, 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 all we want. But this freight train has left the building, so to speak, and we need to get on board. I can tell you, I have been on board in these discussions for the last 4 years in trying to get to an appropriate understanding of how many people we at Muskoka Lakes represent. We have that. That data is in the latest report. I encourage all of council to go to the municipal modernization tapes, watch the committee structure, watch the discussions that have gone on. But we know how to count. In round numbers off the top of my head, we represent about 25,000 people. Or maybe it's 25,000 seasonal. Again, I don't have the report. Maybe Frank or Derek or Ruth has it right in front of them. But those numbers have been solidified. The report I believe you have in front of your hands, Councillor Kelly, is not a report that was done 4 years ago, and that flagged questions as to how are they using these people to count or not count. We now have confirmation around the district table about how to count people for the first time in 4 years. And it's a combination of this Environics data and the second home study and the Canadian census. And again, we can argue 1,000 people plus or minus. At the end of the day, the township's role within the district is still going to be roughly 45 or 46% of the total population. So that's the fundamental of what it is. Again, I encourage all of council to attend tomorrow at 4 o'clock after a planning meeting, which will hopefully be done by 4 o'clock, that modernization meeting. So.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. And certainly there's a lot of people with their hands up. So I'll call on Councillor Edwards first, and then Nishikawa, and then Hayes.
Thank you very much. Things are coming, that's for sure. But it's sad that the mayors who are sit on that committee did not talk to the townships, get their reports and that. They just arbitrarily went to 12. It may be 14 or 15 and maybe 18, But, and I think that should be held up. That should not go to district council at this time until every member of every council in the areas that are affected have their say. And that's the thing, because that was just at that meeting, oh, there was 12, there was 18, and oh, let's go 12. That should have come to all the councils, and it should have gone out to the public first. And that's my only thing. That committee are doing exactly what the province we're doing. We're doing it, and that's it, and it's done. And that's not the way it should be done. It may be 12 at the final, but let the public and all the other councils have their say.
Okay, good. Thank you. Listen, before I go any further as chair here, I will call on Cheryl Mortimer, our clerk. And my only concern is she's going to provide perhaps a higher level, but this is heavy duty. This is a huge discussion, and it's 12:30 and our council meeting starts in 30 minutes. And I would have preferred, just as the chair, that this didn't come to this committee at all, and it should have come to council, and it should be an hour and a half discussion. This is really a big deal. And I'm going to ask Cheryl, I'm going to actually defer to my other committee members to not speak at this time, if you would be so kind, and let Cheryl provide some, I guess, some more framework or rationale to this. Cheryl?
Thank you. So the district invited the area clerks to the last modernization meeting, which we attended to answer questions and observe if we were required, and that was just on the 4th, I believe, of November. There is another meeting tomorrow by that committee. Any of those recommendations that the modernization committee has will have to go to district council first, and it has to receive the votes have to be passed, and then the process will continue from there. Part of the process is triple majority. So the triple majority is, it gets approved at district council, it gets approved by a majority of the lower tier municipalities, and the other criteria is that of those lower tier municipalities, it has to have a majority of the population. So that is legislated. So currently the district is following a legislated process that they are required to review the district council composition. So what the clerks have met recently a couple of times because of the this matter coming forward. So what we plan to do as a group is, once some kind of a recommendation comes from the district council, we are going to prepare a group report to our respective councils outlining what the process is. And the part of the legislation is that they require public to hold a public meeting. So the district will be holding a public meeting. They will be seeking public input on their website. I'm not sure what that looks like yet, but we will be promoting that to help with that. Once that decision is made, we will be notified and requested to consider these items. Now, because of the timing, we don't have time right now to do an in-depth analysis of our specific councils for the next meeting, but we will do that for January. The district is on a timeline, and because of that timeline, they are going to be requesting an extension of the deadline, because the deadline is December 10th, and obviously we're not going to make that deadline. But because we are working on the process, we will hope that the ministry does support our request, or the district's request. All of these things would have to be approved and confirmed by the end of the next year to be able to be in play for the 2022 election. Now, if the township starts to consider redoing wards or changing wards or eliminating wards, then that is another bylaw that we would have to consider and approve. And that is subject to the LPAT. So there's a lot of questions out there, and there's a lot of answers that have to be determined and put down in a report for council to review and consider. And so that will be coming forward. So I hope that kind of gives an outline.
Sorry, thank you, Cheryl. And again, we're lit up like a Christmas tree here. So, I mean, everybody's got their hand up, and quite honestly, I don't know what to do other than, as chair, I'm going to suggest that this is obviously a very, very weighty topic. And I mean, I really don't know what to do. This was for information only.
Can I help out, Glenn, just a second?
Sorry.
Can I rise? I'd like to rise on a point of order.
As chair, as chair, I would like to say that I think this is a completely inappropriate forum for this discussion. And I think there is no one here that's going to put their hands up and say, this is great. I'm not seeing any thumbs up. I'm seeing a lot of thumbs down. People want an opinion. They have an opinion to share, and we don't have A, any time, and B, I don't believe it's the right forum to do it. So I'm actually going to accept this as information. I'm not going to invite any more discussion because we'd be here till whenever. And I apologize for that to you as a committee, but I think this is so weighty. I wouldn't know when it should be brought up other than to.
Mr. Chair, I asked to rise on a point of order.
Fine.
Are you allowing me to speak?
Sure.
I'm not going to debate this because I think you're on the right track, sir. I think this requires much more time. I just wanted to point out the urgency that he's here. Tomorrow afternoon, the Modernization Committee will meet, and we have only one voting representative on that committee. That's Mayor Harding. Right now, he has no direction from council as to how to vote. I believe as a result of that meeting, it will then come to council at 3 o'clock on Monday at the district, where you have 4 reps that can vote. Once again, we have no direction from this council as how you want us to vote. I think it's important, and I think, Mr. Chair, you should consider that, and there should be some way of us dealing with those 2 meetings. Thank you for allowing me my point of order.
Thank you. And so to that end, I don't know, we get a special meeting. I actually don't know what to do. So I think what we'll do, well, everybody's got their hand up. So it's 12:35, and I don't know, do we not go to council and because otherwise we can have this discussion, and I think everybody needs to be heard. I do not want to suppress anybody's opinion, and I know that there's a lot of negativity. I know there's a lot of people are saying we weren't involved, we're not involved, we haven't been consulted, we didn't even know. And I mean, I think to that the process is wrong. But I can't go much further with that, so I won't.
If I may help, may I help?
I'd rather not, to be quite honest. Thank you.
Fine.
Okay, I'm going to call on Councillor Jaglowitz to give us his district update. Frank?
Yes, okay. Oh, happy to. I attended several meetings this month. The first meeting was October 19th, a council meeting. Several important things happened there. There was a climate change initiative. And once again, a resolution that was brought forward by members was changed at the committee meeting. But the good thing was Chair Klink read a 5-page report on the 50th anniversary of the district, and that gives a chronological history of the district and the highlights. And I think I'm happy to provide that. I think that should be distributed to all members. It's very interesting. That meeting also dealt with the airport master plan, which is a big item, and talked about broadband. October 21st, Finance and Corporate Services met, and once again, there were just routine things that we dealt with, like development charges and OPP stuff. When we move on after that meeting on the 21st, there was the Muskoka nonprofit housing meeting, of which I'm a member. And the highlight there was have $80,000 in write-offs for people that aren't paying their rent through the nonprofit housing. I also then attended another meeting that was held in Bracebridge on October the 21st. And that was a planning meeting, a joint meeting on the Muskoka Royale project there. Now, that was a very lengthy meeting, a lot of good comments. And I guess the highlight would be that the developer there has got tons of development land, but he wants to build the school right in the middle of the wetlands. And so that's stay tuned. That's going to become a big item. After that, I attended the November 4th Municipal Modernization Committee meeting, which has already been discussed. I also attended a meeting with the four of us and the CAO and the mayor, or the four of us, to discuss that. And there's upcoming meetings. I strongly suggest that the modernization issue be the subject of a special meeting. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Ruth, Councilor Nishikawa.
Thank you. I'm going to suggest and I'm going to request that going forward at this particular meeting, that we don't have to highlight everything that happened at District Council other than sort of emergency notices. So I will say that health services have continued to support our long-term care homes. And when there is something that comes up, I happen to forward it to my fellow councillors. And that's where I am looking for your comments prior to me going into a district meeting. So moving forward, I would hope that we could do that instead of me looking through the agenda and reading everything that we just discussed at the agenda. So that's me going forward. Again, I will always forward to councillors things that I need their input on when I'm voting. And I suggest we do that going forward.
Good, thank you. Good recommendation. And I certainly acknowledge your words. And I appreciate you forwarding what you do. Alan, Councillor Edwards.
Thank you. So everybody can have lunch. I'll make it very, very brief. They upped the lake health system by $112,875 to do a crustacean study. They're at 5 lakes: Peninsula, Stewart, Leonard, 3 Mile, and I can't remember the other one at this point. With the shelters, they used to give vouchers 20 to 30 a week. Now they're going up to a month, I should say. They're going 50 plus to help out with the COVID. Traditional stays, you could go 5 to 12 times a month. Now they're 40 to 50 a month and that. So they are helping out, and there's other funding coming in. They've hired more staff for the Safe Start on healthcare, one person, and there's some other funding. Okay, that's my report. Thank you.
Good, thank you. I see no hands. I see no other comments. There is no closed session today. I'll call the time and adjourn the meeting. It's 12:40. Moved by Councillor Roberts, seconded by Councillor Hayes. Be it resolved that this meeting adjourn at 12:40 p.m. And the next regular meeting of the General Finance Committee will be held electronically on December 16th, 2020 at 9 a.m. or at the call of the chair in the Council Chambers Municipal Office in Port Carling, Ontario. All those in favor? Good, that's carried. Thank you very much.